May 11th, 2021 budget work session of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker.
Just kidding, folks. Here in Berkeley.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Here in Berkeley.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Here in Berkeley.
Councilmember Gavin.
Here, Berkeley.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here, Berkeley.
Councilmember Price.
Here in Berkeley.
Mayor Turbrack.
Here in Berkeley. First item on the agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Blanchard with support from Councilmember Hennon. Are there any changes? Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Yes, I'd like to move DDA from the bottom up to the top, so DDA becomes A and everybody falls down one.
Okay. Do Jack Dennis, as the maker of the motion and the supporter of the motion, have any issues with that?
No problem. No issues.
Any other discussion on the agenda? All right, seeing none, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on tonight's agenda?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, up next is public comments. Our public comments will operate under the same rules they do in a regular meeting. If you'd like to comment, please raise your hand on the screen or call and dial in, and you will be recognized by either name or number. Remember, you will be limited to 3 minutes. And when you are called, you may unmute yourself. I do apologize for the rules today. I didn't pull up an old agenda. I kind of mailed that part in. If anybody does have an issue, please let me know.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not seeing anyone at this time. I do see a phone number. So if the phone number is trying to dial in, just remember to push star.
Yeah,
6.
I'll do that. So the phone number, if you are trying to get in, again, this isn't live though, so if you're not, it's 312-626-6799. The meeting ID is 949-2984-6645. And once you're in, if you would like to speak, as Ms. Mathis mentioned, press the star key. That gives you the notification that your hand is up and we can call you. All right, does not appear that we have anybody ready for public comments. So then we will close public comments and we will move on to our order of business this evening. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 1 on tonight's agenda?
PowerPoint presentation. Matter of receiving a PowerPoint presentation.
Mr. Pollack, I imagine that you will be handling this, maybe in concert maybe with the city manager, Mr. Baumgarten. Whenever you guys are ready, you may begin.
All right, and we didn't test run this, Tori, but I do have
okay.
the screen in the background. Let's hope it works. Before I do start on the PowerPoint, a couple things. The ClearGov digital budget, they have a draft at ClearGov that they're working on now. They'll have a kind of a working document for us, and then once council finalizes the budget next week, I'll send them an updated finalized budget, and we should have a kind of a working digital budget document, I would think within a couple of weeks after that. This is kind of a trial and error, as you know, for all of us. I think this is going to be a really good document. It'll help as well with the transparency piece for Tori. We kind of jumped into this, and I appreciate council's support on it, but I think it's going to be an excellent document for many years to come. So we should have that for you soon. Other thing is, and this certainly was meant as no slight to the DDA. I know Councilmember Baker pointed out to our city manager that I did not have DDA on the PowerPoint. That's certainly not by intent. I went with last year's, and I think I had removed them last year, just I think because I didn't have a lot of data, but I did put in this updated presentation a couple of items at the end with what the DDA has planned, and then fund balance, which you'll see at the end of the presentation here. So well, once again, you won't find a finance director that supports DDA more than I do. So it was certainly oversight and certainly no intent.
And I've Mark and members of council, I've uploaded the presentation that you're about to see with the amended DDA numbers to the shared drive now. So there'll briefly be 2 of them in there, but after this evening, we'll take the previous one out and just have the one presented to you this evening in place for your reference later.
And I just want to also add that I was not aware that I thought Matt was going to do the DDA. I'm not aware that our director was back, or I would not have put her on the bottom like that. So I apologize for that.
Thank you.
All right, Tori, I think I'm ready. Is it showing for everybody?
No, it is not.
Oh,
If you don't have it, it's okay. I have it pulled up.
off to a great start then. Great. The first screen, just some summary of our general fund, a little overview.
Mark, we're
All
not.
right, Mark,
seeing
I'm gonna go ahead and share it, Mark, for you.
Okay.
Hold on. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go down.
Apologize. I am definitely technologically challenged, as Tori will attest.
No.
Well, Stan will probably attest to that too. Our 2021-22 assumptions, we did have a taxable value increase again above inflation, 4.88%. Comparative millage rate drop of 3.38% due to Headley, and then also due to the drop off of our debt millage. The 2020 millage for capital improvement project improvements was rolled back to 1.8833, leaving our total city millage levy of 15.9886. We do expect our state shared revenue to be slightly up from the amended 21-22 estimates from the state. I think in the end, government money, and then maybe the state did a little better than expected. But if you remember, we anticipated a 20% loss to be conservative during the current fiscal year, but we ended up coming in much better than that. So we amended that slightly based on the state's estimates. We have a 2% salary increase for most employees, plus we have additional PSO personnel. They're still working on the dispatch additions, and I believe that they have a command officer that they need to put in place, so that'll impact our budget. Our healthcare costs, same as the amended, the current year, the active and retiree, although we did have budgeted a slight increase from last year because I conservatively budgeted last year, but not conservatively enough because we did have a rough year. And we anticipated, as far as healthcare goes, that COVID would impact it downward, but it actually had the opposite impact because so many people took voluntary procedures and things of that nature. We have a 3.14% increase in MERS pension contributions. The 18% increase in public safety pension contributions is due to the $200,000 voluntary contribution that the trustee board agreed we'd like to get back closer to that 80% funding level that they had years ago. Sorry, I just advanced a page on my own, so I'm looking at my own. Give me 1 minute here. And then the CIP requests was an increase of 645 from last year. And then our SERP requests increase of about 648,000 from last year. Okay, next slide, Tori. The Proposal A limits, just a little reminder, Proposal A limits growth in taxable value to the lesser of 5% rate of inflation, whichever is lower. And Proposal A, since it was adopted in 95, the average rate of inflation has been right at 2%. Since 2013, taxable value began to recover from the housing crisis, and inflation has averaged about 1.6%. Since 2013, taxable value has increased an average of, 4.5% annually. 2%, that creates a 2.9% average gap between the taxable value increases and the average rate of inflation. With Headley rollback added into the equation, we realized much lower increases each year in property taxes revenue, and that the increase in taxable value or real property. So the Headley effect here, along with Proposal A, as we've talked about, gives us kind of the double whammy. So it impacts us in both ways. So it makes it a little more difficult as far as revenue. This is a breakdown of our millages proposed for this year. As you can see, we're slightly under 16 mills in total. And we were about 16.5 last year. So we did have that drop due to the debt falling off. And then this, our taxable value, you can see a steady increase that we're recognizing, that we're seeing. As anyone knows that sees a home go up for sale, it doesn't stay for sale very long. Some of them don't even get signs up anymore. So the values just continue to rise because of supply and demand.
We're on the next slide, Tori.
I'm sorry, Tori. I'm advancing my own, but not telling you. So I'm on the screen that shows property taxes, taxable values, and then I'll advance to the next one now. Property taxes revenue. Again, you can see our impact of revenue. These are estimated net of our DDA capture. So 10,451,316 in total. Next screen, Tori. And then the state shared revenue. We've been comparing this for a while now, but you know, this looks good because it's on an upward trend. But as we know, that statutory portion continues to be the difficult part for communities, cities, villages, townships, because the state has reduced that significantly, and it's really, it's not recovered, and it's nowhere close to recovering. It's a small portion of what it used to be. Next slide. The state shared revenue, just in dollars, you can see back to 99-2000, which reflects that statutory portion was 800,000 for Berkley, and this year, even with maintaining the same level, we're under 200,000. So the constitutional is by formula. There's not much they can do about that. So that does continue to rise, but statutory is continuing to be the difficult part for every community. Next screen. Our other revenue highlights, again, impact of COVID-19, we're just not going to know fully. It does seem like there are some lights at the end of the tunnel here with the governor setting things based on the vaccinations, but it does look like we'll bounce back a little bit in some revenue, so we'll see. But long-term impact, we won't know. Building department is continuing to see, as Erin will attest when she presents, that there are increases in activity in people building and repairing and adding to. So we expect those revenues will bounce up some. Our investment earnings, anyone who knows who has money in the bank or invest in CDs, there's just not much rate return there right now. So, but we will put additional money into the county fund, and we will also put additional money into some CDs in the upcoming year. So I hope that'll get us a little bit, but nowhere near what we were getting. And then we expect the ARP plan coming up. If we get the half, which again, we've estimated 1.5, there's still no solid numbers for non-entitlement communities, which Berkley is, so we don't really know what the total dollars will be. But as the budget sits, I put half in for next year and half in for the following year. But if we do in fact get that money in June, that'll shift back to current fiscal year, and then the second half will get in next fiscal year. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that it still ends up being a good chunk of money for us to utilize. Next screen, Tori. 6-year trend of revenue. You can see we're on an upward trend in the general fund, which is a good thing. Some of that's due to taxes, but also due to, you know, our other revenues continue to do well. So, and then our expenditure highlights. We budgeted 2% in wage increases for the majority of employees, as I mentioned. We are in contract negotiations right now with all three unions, so those could impact some of the numbers here, which we'll bring back to council when you ratify or when they ratify and you approve. So there could be some impact there, but we're still working on those negotiations as we speak. And we also looked at the merit committee, spent significant time reviewing, and we also may have some changes there as well for council to approve. Public safety, as I mentioned, is still working on filling those vacant positions for dispatch. Overall, our healthcare costs, I budgeted an increase of 4.5%. As I mentioned, I was a little low on my estimates from actual for a couple of years, but came back a little bit this year as far as cost, but we're still well below costs of a fully insured healthcare plan by comparison with our partially self-insured plan. So it's working out very well. Next screen. Some additional expenditure highlights. Our pension contributions will increase. The return assumptions hit starting in July of 2021. So some of those assumption changes, one being the 7.35 return made by MERS impact starting this year. So I'm estimating our contribution about 125,000 above where it was the current year. Our PSO pension, as I mentioned, we had a voluntary commitment there, and that will also impact when we contribute toward retiree health for public safety. We also contribute that extra money into the retiree health fund. So those both will help fund those items, the MERS pension and the OPEB. Our contribution to MERS will increase till we get to 100%, and I think they estimated around 19 years right now. So we still got a ways to go, but council has committed to those extra dollars funding each year, so we'll continue to do that. And the PSO pension increases are anticipated a lower percentage for the next 14 years until that's when the estimate for the PSO pension at 100% will be. And then, as I mentioned as well, we committed to additional funding on the trustee board for the public safety pensions because we'd like to get it back above that 80% level. Next slide. These are the CIP. I won't go through all these. I won't read them all, but these are the highlights of the CIP and the CERP for the upcoming year. We do have quite a bit of capital planned, and as each director will tell council, it's appreciated that you continue to support some of these projects that I know have been on lists for years, but they're getting done, and that's a great thing. So the commitment is something we all appreciate. Next screen, Tori. Transfers out. We have 478.8 now. The Parks and Rec revolving fund transfer could change from the 450. A lot's going to depend on this year and then the revenues that are generated, especially from the summer camp, which looks like Teresa may get to have. So I think we're moving in that direction. And then the budgeted transfer for the annual excess leave buyouts, which we transfer on an annual basis. Next slide. And that's just the trend of our expenditures. You know, again, the commitment's been made by council to do additional capital projects. So, that's a significant increase in expenditures, but we've certainly been able to maintain fund balance, which is a good thing. So our fund balance, and now that you have a policy, your fund balance will stay within that policy, and we'll spend down some of that surplus. And as this shows, the 6-year trend of the fund balance, and again, these numbers will change based on actual finish for the current fiscal year, but we anticipate will be just under 4% at the end of next fiscal year if the budget is approved as is. Next screen. Get into major streets. Again, it's not much different than last year. We expect our
one screen off, I believe. Again, Tori.
Yeah, major streets overview. I'm sorry, Tori, I should be following you, but when I tried to switch over, I wasn't able to. So I'm looking at my own screen, but which is not what you were looking at. So
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm not as financially sound as you are. So I'm just trying to follow along.
I'm certainly, as we mentioned, not technologically sound, so trade-off. And then the expenditures, as we broke down, I think the second year I was with Berkley, we made some changes in our major and local streets because we had so many different categories, but we kind of summarized those a little bit and moved the line items in each one to be a little more consistent. So it's not quite as busy as it used to be, and we moved to our employee active and benefits into 952. We do still have 2 employees from our DPW in major and another 2 in local. We expect about 223,000 in contractual services, joint patches, concrete repairs, and then the tree trimming again along local or along major streets by J.H. Hart is estimated around 90,000. Next screen. And then again, the major street trend of fund balance. Major streets is extremely well funded. Derek and Matt and I had a brief conversation about there may be an interest in council soon to utilize some of this money to use in conjunction with your capital improvement millage to do possibly do a bigger project on a major street. So that possibility still is out there. So we'll certainly bring that forward in the future to you. Local streets, again, not a whole lot of changes. Act 51 revenues based on the estimates around 453 in local, and then just summary again of how we've broken down our local streets from years past, and then we're estimated to have revenues 661 and expenditures 795. I am going to inquire about the transfer of money from major to local, where we can fund a little bit more in the local. I think there's a movement in Lansing where they're going to be a little more flexible with major and local street money spending. So we'll keep an eye on that. Next screen, Tori. Once again, fund balance trend here is a little bit downward, but still estimated to have over 700,000 in your local street fund at the end of next fiscal year, which is still a healthy fund balance. Next screen, solid waste. I was worried last year, but it looks like our revenue is at least keeping pace with our expenditures in this fund, so we won't be under any imminent need to go to the voters for a Headley override. So we still have some surplus, and if everything works out on budget, we'll end up with about 186,000 at the end of 21-22, which again would leave us in a position where we're not having to worry about Headley overrides at this point. Next screen, and then a 5-year trend of solid waste fund balance. You can see it dipped down, and I was a little concerned at 1920, but you can see we've maintained and even have a little bit of budgeted surplus. And part of that is due, Derek's on top of spending. We bought a truck to assist, so there's been some capital purchases that have expended some of that well, but still in good shape. I would say, let's say okay shape. Next screen, CDBG. I thank Aaron for taking the bull by the horns on this one, and she inquired about some ADA park paths, which is, I think it's more exciting than ADA ramps at the end of streets, which we put forward, but we do have the money at the bottom there. You'll see that that's the money we expect to be reimbursed for our public safety lobby project. But the anticipation this year is to spend a good chunk of that money on park paths, which again, I appreciate Aaron looking into that and finding a different use for that money. But we have our usual haven, and then large print books, which I know Matt Church appreciates for the library because they do get utilized. And then our snow removal for seniors. Next screen. Just a quick capital projects funds overview. That's our court building fund. I know a question had come in about, I think Councilmember Hennon asked about, the excess funds and these funds that we're no longer using, but there is a possibility in the court building fund that we could transfer that money. I want to make sure I do it properly. So I do have a question out to see if we can transfer that to the general fund, because the intended use is City Hall, I think, at this point. We did use some of that money last year for the arena demolition. So there is some fund balance left there, and I know City Hall needs some work. Sidewalk fund, we got into last year as the first year of that. We certainly found out this year maybe we were a little aggressive going from about 100 properties to closer to 600, but it's moving along. That's the good thing, is we're getting some of this done, and urgent need to get some of these worst sidewalks replaced. So residents have been great. They've been understanding, and a lot of them have said, I'd rather just go ahead and pay it. So I'm working with all of them, but the ones that have hardship, we're certainly we're working with them, and so far we haven't had anyone say that they refuse to pay it. So it's worked out pretty well so far. And then our roads fund, Derek's working on spending the surplus we had, and then over the next couple of years, there'll be additional surplus. So as I mentioned earlier, if you combine maybe some of this with major street money, you may have a bigger project on the horizon if council so wishes. Next screen. Our water and sewer fund overview. Just summaries. Our revenue, about 7.7 million. Consumption charge, 4.2 of that, and our ready to serve charge about 708. And then our stormwater charge revenue is budgeted at 2.5. Rate increases proposed: water 1.5, sanitary sewer 3.5, storm rate 4, and fixed water rate of 2. And as these usually are, these are mostly pass through. I think we just got final numbers on some of these, but in anticipation again of sewer or water and sewer projects upcoming, we feel that these are good rates to pass through for residents. Next screen. Additional overview: the water rate study that Plant Moran did way back in 2017 anticipated some of these repairs and replacements, which the city's done a great job of continuing on. I know the commitment of sewer lining is certainly something that bodes well for the community, and we've got about 2.2 in water and sewer infrastructure upgrades in that study, and we've either been able to maintain or go above that on an annual basis. So working capital amount needs to be between 3 and 4 based on the forecast, and we've been able to maintain that as well. We've got 2.8 million in for the upcoming year, and we have some building improvements for the DPW, which I think everyone agrees needs to happen, just at a better bid price. We've got those in at 930, and then our working capital still remains around 4 million. Next screen. There's our expenses trend. You can see there was a significant jump in the last couple years, but again, that's projects that are sorely needed as far as water and sewer infrastructure. So next screen. Parks and Rec overview. Again, I commend Teresa and her staff for what they're doing in COVID times. It's incredible that they've continued to keep things flowing and functioning. I know they certainly hope to see the summer camp come off, because that's a big revenue generator for them. But we're projecting about 857 again with some uncertainty, and then a deficit of 890 total. That's where, again, I'm just estimating here where we end the year. We're going to make sure that general fund transfers the difference, and we budgeted 450. That could change. It could be as what I estimated at the bottom there was about 635, but it's going to depend on where we end this year. So we are getting some revenue in, but if we need to amend the Parks and Rec transfer to 635, it would be an additional 185 that we would need from the general fund. So I'll keep you updated on that as the year progresses.
And Mark,
Next
just a
screen.
note,
Yeah.
Mark, just a note while we're on top of this. We recently got the guidelines from Treasury on what the ARP funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, can be spent on. One of those is certainly lost revenue, which the significant portion of the Recreation Department's lost revenue is tied to changes from COVID. So we do feel like this would be at least one of the areas that we would invest those funds into.
Yeah, good point, Matt. Absolutely. Next screen, Tori. And again, fund balance, it's been spent, park investments, other things. So it certainly is. I mean, this wasn't updated yet, but it certainly is something we expect. It will be at zero more than likely when we finish the 21-22 budget, because we're going to transfer whatever's needed from the general fund to make sure that we don't have a fund deficit. Next screen. And then our senior activities, we used to transfer money from the surplus here, but there's a very small surplus expected to be generated in the upcoming year. And we'll likely transfer that balance to the Parks and Rec Fund, as we've done in years past. So whatever residual balance is left there, roughly 20-some thousand will probably be transferred in. Next screen. And then this is the DDA that I added, that we expect about 350,000 net in revenues this year. Other revenues about 34,750, and expenditures are budgeted at 497,913. And then I just did a summary of some of the expected projects coming up in the DDA: flower baskets, the public art and placemaking, streetscape, sidewalk repair, wayfinding, and then the Berkley Plaza project all add up to about 248,000. And then if the budgeted deficit of 112 will leave, I'm estimating around 146,850 by the end of next fiscal year if the budget is approved and expended as budgeted. And then the final slide is just a summary of the DDA fund balance. Pop up there in 1920, and then that money over the last couple of years has been expended as originally planned. So still expect to have about 150,000 at the end of the 21-22 budget year. And that is my presentation.
Any questions for our finance director on the presentation? Again, we're going to get into each of these things certainly in more detail as we go line by line through the budget, but just any questions before we get into that phase of our meeting? Councilmember Baker.
There we go. Thank you. Yes, not so much a question, just a request. First of all, thank you, as always, Mark and Matt and team, for pulling this together. We appreciate these overviews to kind of help set the context and give us a perspective of what's happening. So these are very helpful to us. Ideally, if we could receive these a little sooner, it would be great, because then it'll help us as we navigate the 200-something pages of content that we receive. But that's all good. And I have every confidence in the numbers that are in these slides. And so my request is simply in the presentation itself. So I know we're still in the budget process here. These are not yet publicly posted as approved. And so before these are posted, I'd simply request some, I'll call it PowerPoint hygiene. As we saw tonight, slide numbers would have been very helpful. So please add slide numbers before this is posted. Please correct the typos. There are several typos throughout the document. Like on the water and sewer fund overview, there's a spot where it just goes und. Presumably that was a letter missing.
Yeah.
And for the fund balance 5-year trend charts, I love those charts. Those are very helpful, but it's hard to understand how to make sense of those since they don't have a percentage along with them. So my request, I think it should be straightforward to calculate. I won't say it's simple, but straightforward to put little additional data, little labels there that says the percentage. And for those funds where we have a policy or a guidance of a desired range, like from this range to that range, if you could put those little stripes across it, that'll help us visually indicate whether or not we have excess funds in our fund balance, or if we're right in the zone where we want to be, or if we're in danger and need to stock that back up. So again, I have every confidence in the numbers, and all I'm merely suggesting is just give a little TLC, a little PowerPoint hygiene to the deck here before it gets posted, because they say the budgets reflect our community's priorities, and it's the single most important function we have here as a council. And I think that important documents like this need to put our best foot forward and represent this council and staff and our residents in the highest possible light. So, it's making a big deal about extra spaces and owned balances and stuff like that. But it's the little things, right, that really make a big difference. These are certainly adequate for tonight. I feel very well briefed with the content. And so my question would be, who would I follow up with to get a preview of the revised draft with those suggested changes in it? Is there someone I should follow up with in the next couple of days?
That would be me.
Okay, Mark, cool. And just threw out a couple of days, but I'm completely at your convenience. Do you have an estimated time frame for, if a week from now is more convenient once we get past the budget cycles? When should I follow up with you?
I should be able to tweak it by the end of the week. So I would say by Friday. It's fine.
Okay, great. Well, I'll reach out on Friday, and if we can connect Friday or Monday, or just shoot me a revised draft just to kind of give it a onesie, that kind of stuff, a look-see there real quick. I think that'd be great. So cool. Thank you very much. Like I said, no comments or questions on the content, just in the public presence that this document will have for our residents. So again, thank you. Really good stuff.
Any other questions or comments before we get into the individual budget process? All right, seeing none. Ms. Mitchell, would you then please read item number 2 on tonight's agenda?
Budget work session, matter of a discussion of the proposed 2021-2022 City of Berkeley budget. A, Downtown Development Authority, DDA. B, Communications. C, Community Promotions. D, IT. E, Library. F, Public Safety. G, City Council. H, City Manager. I, City Hall. And J, Attorney.
All right, and as we have seen and was just read, we will be starting off with the Downtown Development Authority. And with us this evening is Miss Jennifer Finney. And Jennifer, are you prepared to get us rolling?
I am, yes. And first of all, it's great to see all of you. And thank you for revising the agenda so I could be the first one tonight. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Certainly. Good to see you again, by the way.
Yes. So I started this budget before I went on maternity leave, and then Matt Baumgarten and the DDA's organization committee and DDA board really took a lead on finalizing everything. So if any questions arise, and I'm hesitant, I might have Mr. Baumgarten kind of step in just because he was really involved with this process. So I just wanted to give everyone that heads up. I've been fully briefed, but again, I wasn't part of some of those conversations, so he might have better insight. Anyways.
Everything that was done correctly came from Jennifer. Everything that's wrong came from me.
No. Okay.
What page would you like us to start with?
Yes, if you could please go to page 168, and that will be kind of in the PDF viewer. It'll be page 68, but in the actual document, it would be 169. But figured it'd be easy to reference the PDF viewer, so everyone can quickly just kind of type in that and not scroll through. So 168.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So revenues show a slight increase this year from the property tax and the property tax capture. The revenue will come from investment earnings, co-op advertising, and sponsorships. You'll also see that we have some state shared revenue at $14,000, and this gives us an estimated operating budget of $348,930. Those are the main highlights from that. The first 2 pages. Are there any questions?
Oh, and very quickly, council members, as you're going through this and Jennifer and the other directors are referencing different things, if I'm looking up at my budget page and I don't see your hand, just please feel free to hop in and say, hold on a second, could you and ask the question if I don't recognize you. I would hate to miss something because I'm looking at the numbers and miss you guys on the bottom screen. So thank you.
Okay, then I'm going to jump to page 170. And the 2 main items I would like to call out on this page is you'll notice that the office space rental has decreased from 5,000 to 0. And that is because the DDA office is now in City Hall, whereas before it was in Folio and we were renting that space. The other item that I want to note is the professional development section. This hasn't increased, but I just simply wanted to explain that this will go towards the National Main Street Conference, the Michigan Downtown Association, and any additional trainings. It does look like in 2021 that the National Main Street Conference will actually be in person. Actually, I think it's in Richmond, Virginia. So we've allotted those expenses for that account number. Any questions pertaining to that page? Nope. Okay. And I also need to apologize. I'm kind of flipping screens here too, so my delay is because I'm trying to do that. So my apologies if there's a slight delay on my end. I'm not the quickest moving screens. So I'm going to then direct your attention to page 172, please. And from there, I do have a few items that I would like to call out and bring your attention to. So you will see the membership and dues. So these are the 3 organizations that the DDA is involved with: the National Main Street Organization, Michigan Downtown Association, and the Michigan Economic Developers Association. There is a slight increase for this year's budget, and that's simply because some of those dues have slightly increased. The next item I would like to bring your attention to is the legal services. I'm sorry. I accidentally flipped to the wrong screen. My apologies. So legal services, so that actually has increased from last year. Last year we budgeted $2,000 and this year we're looking at $2,500. The reason for that is because we actually just recently hired a new DDA attorney and his fees are a little bit more than our old one. So that's why you see that little bit of a bump up there. And then scrolling down a little bit more, I just wanted to bring your attention to the Downtown Berkeley Partners non, and then it says pro, that's the Downtown Berkeley Partners nonprofit. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that, the full account title for that. So if there are any questions about that, that's the full account name. And just checking my notes to make sure I covered everything I wanted to on this page. I believe I did. Are there any questions about anything on this page? No? Okay. Then if you could all jump to page 174, please. The main item I wanted to call out on this page is that we consolidated all events into one account instead of having a breakdown like we've had in previous budgets. The reason we did that is some of our events fluctuate a little bit. For instance, typically for our ladies' night out events pre-COVID, we would have a shuttle bus. During COVID, we are not having a shuttle bus for safety reasons. So the expenditures for that, for those events have been less than pre-COVID events. So it's just easier from, a budget standpoint, where we don't have to do a budget amendment when it's all grouped together in one overarching events. And then of course the DDA is making sure per event that we're staying within, our own budget that we've allotted for that. So from our end, we are keeping tabs of how much we're spending for each event, just so we can keep that for our records. Are there any questions about any other items on that page? Okay, seeing none, I would like you all to jump to page 175, please. And I would like to bring your attention to holiday lights. And my apologies, we'll have to update this budget as the DDA board did approve for this recommended budget year to increase that to $30,000. You'll see that in the recommended budget for 22-23, but we would also like to do that for this year as well. And the purpose of increasing that budget is so we can have more holiday lights towards the west end of 12 Mile and also on Coolidge as well. Any questions? Okay.
Hey, Jennifer, on that one is Baker here. Hi.
Hi.
On the call out inside of Holiday Lights, it says Leclerc contracts. Is that like the name of a vendor? It's not just like a typo for electric contracts? Just was curious.
Leclerc is actually the vendor that we use for these holiday lights.
Great. I was just confirming that. Yep. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Okay, if you could all jump to page 176, please. On this page, the main item I wanted to call out is we basically kind of broke down the marketing budget a little bit more. So you will see under contractual services, we actually have allocated $6,000, and this will go towards Catalyst Media. They're the DDA's PR and social media company. Before, we kind of have just been paying them out of the whole marketing bucket, but since we've been using them for a few years, we wanted to kind of break that away and have a specific account for them. So because of that breakout, you'll see that the advertising and marketing account is actually a little bit less than it was in previous years. But again, that's just because we were doing a little upkeep and broke those two accounts apart. Any questions on that page? Nope. Okay, if you could please go to page 177. The first item I would like to point out is the public art and placemaking. We have increased that to $25,000. Those initiatives would be DDA art installations, so any sculptures or murals that we would want to install in the downtown district.
Jennifer,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jack Blanchard here. Just a question. Do we have any projection on the number of murals that might be coming up, or is this just a number put in here?
This is just an estimate. However, I actually know we'll probably have quite a few murals coming. I'm actually talking with 2 different businesses right now. One wants 2 and the other one just wants 1. So I know that we'll see more probably this year than definitely, well, I don't think we even saw one last year, but we'll definitely see more this year. So that was that again for that increase. We're just kind of guessing, but we would rather be safe than sorry.
Great. Glad they're putting up murals.
Yes. And then the other item to note on this page for our facade grant incentive program, you'll see that it has decreased from 25,000 to 15,000. The reasoning behind that is we are reallocating funds. So the $10,000 decrease, we're actually moving to the Berkley Plaza project, which I will touch on in a little bit. And since the DDA has instilled this facade grant program, we have always allocated $25,000 to it. The most we've ever spent is $16,000 on this. So when the organization and I committee met, we felt that for just this year, we could dip it a little bit low, reallocate funds to the Berkley Plaza project, and then next year we can re-up it up to our $25,000. So that is the reason for that dip. Any questions about that?
I have a question, Bridget Dean here. I'm just curious about the pest control. What is that budgeted item?
I'm gonna ask Matt.
Yeah, I can't take that. The DDA actually pays for Great Lakes Pest Control to come in and do rodent mitigation around the dumpsters on the public lots.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, if you could all please jump to page 179. There are a few items I would like to call out here. The first item is the Streetscape Improvements. So you will see that we have budgeted $55,000, which is up from last year. The reason being is we actually, the DDA back, I believe it was in December or January, we decided to allocate $25,000 towards initiatives at the west end of 12 Mile. And we decided to kind of group that into this streetscapes. So that's why you see that little increase in there. Also with this account, we'll be using this money for trash cans and benches in the downtown, which is actually an initiative I'm working on right now.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Hi, Ross here. Just a quick question, or more of a comment. I would hope that as we look to kind of the trash receptacles and things like that, making those purchases, that maybe we look to try to include maybe a dual trash receptacle recycling setup, just as a consideration when we're looking to make those purchases. I know it might end up costing a little bit more, and that's kind of decreasing the number you can actually do, but I think it'd be nice to have kind of a dual receptacle.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I could echo off of that. I like the idea. I think more than just the cost would also have to include the pickup costs because it may cost more for someone picking it up. So I like the idea to investigate it, but there's a few aspects of it to look at.
I'm wondering if it makes a special sense for certain locations, like the high school plaza would be something that would come to mind as a place where it would make a lot of sense to offer recycling. And I recognize it would be a greater cost, but I think we could keep a lot of materials out of the dumpster if we did that.
All great suggestions and ideas. Thank you. The other item I would just like to note is the sidewalk repair. So you'll see the 25,000 in that category, and that is the city and the DDA are simply splitting the cost of sealing the 12-mile stamped concrete. So that's why you see that cost there. You will also see on this page the Berkley Plaza project. It has an allocation of 60,000. So I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why we decreased the facade grant program was so we could increase the budget for the Berkley Plaza. Originally, the DDA had set aside 30,000, and when we went to bid, the bids were higher than what our budget was. So we came back and decided that we, love this project. We want to see this plaza. So we decided to increase our budget to 60,000. I know the school district also did as well. And I believe the city is as well, as this project is a partnership with all three entities. So I would say, the one big thing the DDA wants to accomplish this year is that plaza project, which is why we decided to double our budget for that.
Jennifer, Jack Blanchard, another question on where do we stand on wayfinding? I see you've got some funds in here. How close are we to getting this completed, and where are we in the process?
Yes, thank you. That's a good question. So phase 1 of our wayfinding signs will actually be installed later on this week and into next week. And then I'm going to set up a call with Corbin Design. They are the ones who are helping us with this. And then also Matt Baumgarten and myself, so we can discuss what the route looks like for phase 2 signs.
Thank you.
And this is Dennis, not a question, just a comment. This is a very exciting page. This is a lot of improvements myself, and I know a lot of people are really looking forward to. So I'm happy to see these.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yes. The DDA is excited as well. Those are the main highlights that I wanted to draw your attention on. I believe we will end with a little bit of a higher fund balance than we would normally like to see. The DDA usually tries to keep our fund balance around 7 to 10%. So, we'll reevaluate as we have these projects moving forward, and the DDA will be using our master plan to see if there are any smaller scale projects we can incorporate to use some of those funds to better the downtown and kind of keep our fund balance, right around that 7 to 10%.
Well, and thank you, Jennifer. And having a little bit higher fund balance, at least this particular year and next year, may not be as something that we would be more likely to correct. One, because we don't know what cost estimates or revenue still COVID, but also any construction project, or really any purchase of any kind right now, things seem to be much more expensive than we anticipated and than they were last year. So having some additional wiggle room in case any of these costs do increase, and allowing us to still be able to do it without having to, move money from somewhere else. In this particular budget this year and next year, not as quite of a challenge as maybe it would be in past years, just because there is still so much uncertainty. As was mentioned, a lot of great projects and things that are going on, a lot of things that we've talked about for a number of years that we're starting to see come to fruition and see budgeted in here. It's not just in those years where we see, in the future we want to see this, in the future we want to see this. We're actually starting to see some of those now, and to see that come to fruition, to continue to I don't want to say revitalize, but continue to enhance the DDA district and what we're able to do downtown. It's very enjoyable to see those things coming to fruition. It's very exciting, I think, for us. And at the same time, as you mentioned, being able to maintain a healthy balance and still have some wiggle room for increased costs is incredibly important. Certainly, thank you for taking some time away to be with us this evening. Any last questions for our DDA director? Councilmember Baker.
I'd like to echo those comments of appreciation and gratitude as the opportunity to interact with the board regularly, including tomorrow morning. It's great to see this great progress. And one of the things that you don't see in the budget is crosswalks. As a budget discussion, my intent here is not to get into policy and all that stuff, but just that the work that's been done with the city to basically remove the barriers and say, oh, never mind, let's go ahead and use the crosswalks after all, was a decision that was made recently. Circumstances were such that we chose not to budget those in prior cycles, and now it seems as though those were overtaken by events, and crosswalks will be open. The two that are previously installed on Coolidge, any additional crosswalks would involve some degree of funding, and those aren't in the budget. So as additional conversations come up down the road, and we see where more of the folks want to cross the road up and down Coolidge and on 12 Mile for that matter, I certainly welcome the ability to ensure that those remain safe and cost effective, right? Basically removing the barriers and all that stuff is pretty darn cost effective. So again, kudos and compliments to Jennifer and the team for a good DDA budget and making wise decisions to invest those funds to better the downtown. Thank you.
Well, the crosswalk conversation, we will leave that to another time. There are a number of factors that go into that. Certainly safety, and certainly the recommendation of our public safety will be first and foremost as we safely decide what we are going to do as we address the crosswalks that were put in the future, or in the past, I should say. Any additional questions or comments for Jennifer? Mayor Pro Tem Dean?
Yes, thank you. Just a comment. I remember, and I'm going back some years, but when I served on the DDA, one of the subcommittees that I served on was wayfinding. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting down with Corbin Design and Moira, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but just talking about all these things and the design of the sign and what do we want to convey and what do we want people, how are people going to find their way around Berkeley? And it's so exciting to see these things coming to fruition. Not that I didn't think it would happen, but it just, you look at the time it takes to move some of these projects forward. And I really commend the DDA on their commitment and stick-to-itiveness, if that's even a word, but it's really, really encouraging to see. And it makes me happy. It's only going to make Berkeley look better overall, but it's a moment of pride in our city as well. So thank you, Jennifer, and the entire DDA for the work that you continue to do. Thanks.
Any additional comments before we allow our DDA director to get back to perhaps some more important things this evening? All right. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. Again, very, very good to see you on here, and thank you for being able to maintain the process throughout having a newborn around, which many of us can speak from experience. Certainly has a way of changing things in your world. So thank you. Let's get back to it.
Thank you.
All right. We will now move on to item B, which is communications.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to follow Jennifer's suit. If you are on a digital version or looking from your computer screen, it is page 59. And then if you have the printed version, it is page 60. So get started. So starting with program supplies, not much has changed. This is more of a footnoted breakdown of our ads and our advertising and marketing funds, which were implemented last year per the communication strategy that I had put together along with Mayor Jack Blanchard, Natalie Price, and the CEAC. In addition to those, I included some marketing best practices to increase our presence with our community. Following that, what you'll notice here is hardware subscriptions, which is a newer line item or title name. I'll leave Stan to give more details on that, but really just the basic overview is we are slowly transitioning our approach to how we categorize our services as the industry changes in terms of the tech space. So what you'll see under my hardware subscriptions are our current streaming services. So basically our live stream and those the actual hardware itself and what have you. Basically, if we don't continue paying those subscriptions, it doesn't work. So that's what that budget's for. In addition, you'll also see another line item, which is for streaming apps, which includes Apple, Roku, and Amazon. We had that in the budget last year, but pushed it back due to the pandemic. So we're re-adding that back into this year's budget year. Well, before I go into the next thing, does anyone have any questions before I move on to the next page? Seeing none. Yes.
Just one thought on the streaming apps. I would be curious to see once we offer that, how often they're used.
Yep, sure.
Worth continuing the expense, or if there's no use of it, then drop it out.
Certainly, yeah, that's definitely something that we've discussed internally in terms of tracking once those are implemented. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to my contractual services line item. Yes, under contractual memberships. These are just the networking chapters for the organizations in the PR and media relations field, just so I can stay current and up to date to my surrounding networks. Following that is the website maintenance. What you'll notice here is an uptick. It's from last year when I know it was a big push and a want from council as well as from the community regarding our website as well as a rebrand, but at least a rebrand in the sense that it works intuitively with what exists now, along with where we're trying to move in terms of the city as a whole. So this year we'll be starting the process. As I stated, it is a two-parter. The first part will be brands, then the next part will be web design and development. I have anticipated the process to be between 6 to 8 months. The reason for that timeline is to ensure proper stakeholder engagement and involvement, along with development and a testing phase. I want to ensure, obviously, not only our end users in terms of residents are able to utilize the new website as well as be acclimated to the changes, but also internally as staff, because if they can't work it, then that kind of defeats the purpose. So that's where that comes from. Following that is our cable production, so CMNtv, basically to ensure that they can record all of our meetings and events. So no changes there. Before I move on to the next page, any questions here?
Hey, Tori, a quick question on that. The mobile app that the city has had in fits and starts over the years here, is that included in the website? Are we giving up on a mobile app? Is it going to be such that it will be mobile friendly in any device, that kind of thing? There's just a way to kind of just at least hint at what our vision is. Obviously, where it's way too early to get into any details, but anything
Certainly.
you could offer from a mobile perspective?
Absolutely. So yes, the recommended or at least best practice is typically to have just a responsive website that compensates for mobile friendly devices. That is the direction that I intend to move us forward. A big component of the website redevelopment as well as making sure that the development process specifically compensates for what our internal staff and directors are looking to provide in terms of their service outreach. So obviously, for example, Victoria being able to document minutes properly on a digital space is a great component. So something like that. But yes, all of it would be mobile friendly.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? No, seeing none. All right. All right, next thing, this is on page 62 if you're looking at a printed version, 61 in terms of a digital copy, is my contractual services for communications. So this kind of what we discussed internally was a lot of consolidations of services in terms of use type. So if a product was used across departments, it made sense to fit into my budget because my department exists only in the essence of working for other departments. So in that regard, there's a lot of consolidating there. So as you'll see, there was a move from Jotform and SurveyMonkey into my budget, which is our surveying tools that is accessible to all of our departments. You will also see MailChimp, which is the new platform that we utilize for our online newsletter. We're still working through the kinks, but as far as design intuitiveness, it's working out. And then what I love about this tool is it helps me actually track better. So that you'll see there, and the price, as you'll look on the budget, kind of upticks based on subscribers. So that's why you'll see slight increases as the years continue. Next you'll see is ClearGov, and Mark hinted at that earlier, but essentially that's going to be our transparency portal and dashboard for the budget moving forward. It's just to assist more in terms of having our residents or any people visiting Berkley and trying to get a better idea of how our taxpayer dollars are spent. So this portal will be used in that form, and then eventually for a digital budget book once we're kind of through this first phase. As Mark shared, you guys were eager to let it go through. So we're kind of doing things in parallel versus one after the other, but we are certainly super excited to roll that out. In addition, you'll also see Sprout Social. I did have that on there last year. It is my publishing tool that assists me with streamlining our communications, which was certainly a need here. And, I am one person. If we could figure out how to clone me, that would be even better. But for the time being, it assists me in that regard in terms of communicating and making sure that we are communicating in all digital spaces, not just a singular one. Last year, we used the base version, which allowed me to kind of get a sense of where to move in terms of our communications, where our users are, where we get the most interactions and such. And the next step, as you can see in the uptick, is to really understand our audience and tailor posts and content more effectively for our residents. So then that way we can actually gauge sentiment and see how projects and services are resonating with our community. So there's that. Following that is the cable franchise admin fees. So those are the PEG fees and the ICCA network that we're a part of. Equipment maintenance, really no changes there. It's just cable, memory cards. We need extra things myself, or if CMN needs something in terms of equipment. Next thing you'll see is my professional development budget. Standard, just assisted summits that I'd like to attend, as well as some communications leadership consulting. Before I move on, any questions on here? Yes, go ahead, Bridget. And then
Thanks.
Steve.
You mentioned you've moved to MailChimp. What were you using before?
We were using GovDelivery, which was a free service through Oakland County. It's not a bad service. It's just more of, it was the base tool, and it didn't allow me to actually see if our users were even reaching, and I couldn't really actually see if there was a click rates, open rates, any of that kind of stuff for me to track. So that's why we moved to MailChimp.
And that makes perfect sense. I use Constant Contact in my business, and it does give you all those metrics.
Yeah.
Click-throughs, number of people, all of those things. And that really is critical to, doing that kind of thing. You want it to be measurable, and you wanted, to your point, all the things you said. So that's a really positive move, and I hope that it works out well for you and serves you in the way that you're hoping. So thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. It certainly is at the moment, so hopefully it just stays with it. The other big thing that I appreciated was the fact that it adjusted to a mobile-friendly view, so I could see it from all different types of browsers or devices. And yeah, just the design aesthetic was a lot nicer than the standard package that I was allowed. Steve, you had some questions?
Yeah, just briefly, is this where we would ask, do we still remain at a stalemate with AT&T being able to carry the council meetings and other broadcasts from our cable access channel? I know somewhere in the thing we have the dialogue every year about how, you know, AT&T wants to charge us a fortune for us to have their equipment on site, and we always say no thanks, and so we lose that portion of our population residents here. Of course, they can follow it on streaming, which is super great, and all the other channels, which I'm really pleased with. But just, I guess, more of I feel obliged to just again confirm that AT&T wants to charge us an arm and a leg, and we're choosing to say no thanks.
Yeah, that is correct. They are still very expensive, which is why we were looking at other alternatives like the streaming apps and what have you, to just expand those options. Granted, everything is based on like, okay, are we actually getting enough subscribers and viewerships and what have you? But yeah, that's per my last conversations with Stan, and in those regards, that was the case still with AT&T.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Great. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the last page for communications. Is just our telecommunications equipment. So this kind of goes along with our hardware subscriptions. What you'll see in my next year's budget, just to kind of give you a heads up, is a lot of what you'll see down here is going to transition to hardware subscription. It's just a continuation of those services. Last year we purchased digital signage dongles, you know, back when we were allowed to still be in person, to have the live stream available in all of our city buildings, so people could watch and see our live stream as they're coming in, so you get that constant presence of Berkley and access to that information. And then the last item in there, if and when this happens, is a placeholder budget item for the chamber's audio system updates, you know, when we're again allowed to meet in person. And the city hall is good. Yes, go ahead.
Jack here. What about the visual thing in the city council chambers? Because all of us that sit on one side of the room have a real hard time seeing those screens. You know, it should be equal for everybody.
Yes.
You know? Shouldn't be discriminated against because we're on the north side.
I think they're in a great spot, Jack. I have no issues with them.
So a couple of things did happen.
Talked about.
Yeah, so a couple of things did happen while, you know, we were shut down. We did upgrade a couple of things, our camera system in there. Thank you, CMN. So all of our cameras are up to date and uniform in that regard. And then I know that Stan, and feel free to jump in, we did talk about doing a dual view in terms of screens. It's really just based off of what happens with the building. It is budgeted for. It's just more of, if we do the reno, what does that look like? And how it kind of works in terms of cost, just because what is not expensive is well, it is expensive, but the TVs is, you know, and those kinds of hardware is not the most expensive. It's the wiring, because based off how the wiring is going to be feeded through the walls is dependent on that. So.
Well, keep that in the back of your mind, because some people want people to see what's going on.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
We joke a little bit about it, Jeff, but it's something that we have talked about, and I know there have also been larger scale conversations about what would eventually happen, you know, potentially with City Hall and renovation to that space. And as we continue to invest in upgrading City Hall, not only for access of residents, efficiency of use, but, you know, in-person meetings, council meetings, and other meetings that are held in there, having some additional capabilities, especially for, you know, screens in some different places, I know is something that we will continue to discuss and hopefully make a priority, because it's not just you, Jack, and the folks on your side, my right side, that is. It's also residents who are also there have trouble seeing you. Now we see whenever we turn that on, everybody gets up from one side and moves over to the other side, tries to find a spot so that they can see what's going on as well. And those things are are important. You know, some people are auditory visual learners, and being able to see those things certainly helps drive that message home. And when it's difficult for people to see that, who are on, again, my right or the left side, if they're facing us, it is just, you know, I think we could do a little bit better to ensure that everybody can see and accurately understand the information that we're presenting.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add in. Yeah, I was going to ask again my obligatory question. Why can't we just mount the projector in the ceiling? We've been talking about that for years instead of putting it on reams of paper and all that stuff. But I think the idea of thoughtful screens makes a lot more sense. This, you know, the screen solution would help, you know, decrease Mr. Blanchard's neck cramps issues there and things like that. So, yeah, again, as that conversation continues, it feels like we'll be at City Hall for a while now. Maybe there's a way to, you know, we are probably not the only council in America that is that has an idea about wanting to show content, right? So I would imagine that it would be straightforward for us to do some go and sees, just reach out to some other, you know, counterparts in neighboring communities, ask them how they've set up their council chambers, recognize the quirks and idiosyncrasies and unique aspects of our particular chambers, and factor that into to an approach. You know, we don't have to invent this up from scratch by ourselves, right? We can certainly harvest best practices and working ideas from neighboring communities who have blazed this trail ahead of us here. So yep, I'm in full support of whatever we can do to, you know, have a very welcoming and inviting and informative space for when we are able to meet in person again.
Thank you.
Any other questions on, oh, sorry, same thing. Any other questions or comments on communications as presented by Ms. Mathis? Okay, well, thank you, Tori. And I was surprised to hear that you had a pop quiz on day one in your class today. And I know that this isn't live, but I'm sure it will be seen, and that professor certainly knows who he is. So thank you. I appreciate that. We will now move on to item number C, please, which is community promotions.
Well, thank you for that. I hope he doesn't see that until August then.
There's a reason I didn't say a name. I didn't want to, you know, we're okay.
All right, so for community promotions, Dan and I will be tag teaming this one. If you want to go ahead and flip to either page 26, or if you're on your computer, page 25. And then Dan, you can take it away.
Fantastic. Good evening. So just straightforward, this is a short little budget we can go through quickly. Memberships, you'll see slight increase there. Those are just a lot of the memberships that Berkley is a part of. Usually anything that, like Tori said before, that is utilized by all of the departments, we typically house in these budgets that kind of serve all of the different departments. So our membership to the Berkley Chamber, Michigan Association of Mayors, MML, SEMCOG, those sort of things get housed under this budget. Moving on to contractual services, you'll note the annual Holiday Lights Parade, Tri-Community Coalition, Berkley Huntington Woods Youth Association. Those are annual sponsorships that council is always generous to support those nonprofit endeavors. This year, we have added the potential for a Berkley High School scholarship or 2 scholarships as a way to sponsor our youth in the community and kind of work to support those that are interested in working in the professional service for different local governments or state governments in hopes that they will bring more to the profession and uplift more communities. Do you want to touch on 901?
Absolutely. So for advertising, so this is a little different. This is more public advertising than just our own internal advertising components. So this is for the newspaper as well as other advertising opportunities such as the high school yearbook or any type of their newspapers and such. The budget has for that line item has upticked just a little bit just because print media is slowly increasing, especially so given what's happened in the past year. So that's something important that we wanted to keep since it actually has had more of an uptick in interest given the situation that has happened this past year. The next line item is public promotional items. So that's swag material for the chamber bags, new residents, and any other promotional items. Let's say we have an event, hint, hint, in the coming months for a new park, things like that. And then staff promotional items. So for any type of decals that we need on our vehicles, or any type of employee morale items, such as a t-shirt or things that we could, kind of camaraderise around. That's what we're also looking to do. Any questions on this page before we move on to the last one? No? All right. Back
Community,
to you, Dan.
thank you. Community events. So last year, this was not a budget that was heavily utilized, thanks to our dear friend COVID. So every year we do a Cruise Fest dinner. Those are typically our grand marshals or folks that ride in the parade. We do a little dinner with them. I think historically it's been Mr. Kebab. State of the cities, that's typically our department directors attend alongside city council members to the state of the cities that the Chamber of Commerce hosts every October. That number is ballpark for $35 a ticket. That's based on projections of, we have no real idea of what it looks like this year, if it's going to be virtual, if it's going to be in person. Only time will tell.
I feel like I need an increase in my production budget for that. Based on last year, we may need to really continue. I think we set the bar pretty high, and so the only way that we're going to be able to do better is if we have a little bit higher production value for me, maybe some acting lessons, better changes to apparel, just things to really make it look a little bit better, because it was tremendous, and you really did get a lot of positive comments, Tori, from that, and it was very well received. And I'm certainly joking, but it was great, and I think that's an important thing to make sure we note here.
Tori made you look good.
She did her best despite what she had to work with.
SACMA, I think next year all of council should be the background singers for the soundtrack of the 1 hour feature film. But SACMA dinner hosting, we share responsibility with Lathrop Village, Birmingham, I believe. Matt, I might be missing one, but we collaboratively.
Township as well.
Yes, more of them. We collaboratively host SACMA dinners. That's something that didn't happen last year due to the inability for communities to come together and share ideas in person, and to do those networking and those regional collaborations. And then boards and commissions volunteer recognition is, we're not exactly certain what this looks like next April, but hopefully the potential to do a picnic or some sort of thing to show our boards and commissions, volunteers, everybody who kind of lends a hand to the city events and the city boards, just how important they are to the city.
Just a quick note on SACMA and the dinners. We have been exchanging emails back and forth. There has not been a decision to meet back in person, but we are going to at least try to host a couple of virtual ones coming up, and depending on how things go, possibly by the end of the year, even if it is in person, probably still scaled back. We typically, it's generally mayors and the hosting council members and staff are there as well. We're not entirely sure what that's going to look like, but there's at least conversations to maybe have something later this year if we're able to do it in a safe and effective manner.
Thank you. And for the last part, I'll pitch to you, Tori.
That's great, thank you. So Berkley Buzz, unfortunately, we wanted to really roll this out last year, but this is just a continuation of us rolling out a full-on citywide newsletter. So this is taking on the amazing traction that the Parks and Rec Department has already cultivated, and adding on to that by giving space for our other departments and their services to be added on to the great work that Parks and Rec does. So that's what that money is budgeted for.
Any
questions?
On that one, what's the anticipated frequency for Berkley Buzz? Quarterly?
So quarterly is what we're looking at. Yep, quarterly for the budget. We're going to follow what the Parks and Rec already has, just to kind of keep it consistent and not mess up their scheduling or anything like that. the way I always share it with them is that I'm here to just enhance, not mess with anything. So I know that Teresa and I had talked about rolling this out in the fall as our first real one. You know, fingers crossed that COVID's not going to screw anything else up for us.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. That wraps up community promotions, and we now move on to item number D, which is IT. Stan, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. Let's start on digital page 63 or page 64 on the printed budget book. We'll jump down to software maintenance and subscriptions. Tori happened to mention that we're trying to migrate everything to reflective accounts. Everything basically in this section, as far as IT in general, is moving to subscription based. So if we use it, we pay for it. When we stop using it, we stop paying for it. Everything here, as far as software goes, is being used on a day-to-day basis in some way throughout all the departments. So everything is listed there. My new account is the Firewall maintenance. That basically, after we stop paying for the subscription on that stops working. The Firewall is basically a very essential piece of our security arena. So that's included now in 761. Equipment and supplies in 778 is your standard widgets, gadgets, cables, things like that on a day-to-day basis. Moving on to the page 65 or digital 64, contractual services. Some of the changes in here are going to be the phone system maintenance. Part of the dispatch upgrade is moving from our old analog system to a digital system, which is a true server platform and internet-based. Since it is now housed in public safety and many of our items are running through it, we are moving to a 24/7 maintenance on the public safety side and the standard 5x9 in the rest of the departments. Scanning and digitizing, talking to the clerk and Jeff in the Historical Museum. There's been a big push to start digitizing specific items, notably council minutes. I know in the past, Jeff has mentioned that it would be nice to find when streets were renamed, simple things like a list of all the police chiefs that have been hired on, and also for FOIAs for Victoria, as far as instead of taking a week to look for things, it might just take a couple hours. So we're going to start kind of slow, because we also want to include later on, as far as community development, a lot of their items are also scanned in. So hopefully in the next, potentially 2 to 3 years, we're looking for some type of document management system to kind of have department-wide searching capabilities, and hopefully kind of bring everything together. But right now we're gonna start with kind of the easy stuff, and I think council minutes would probably be a good target for that. Next is the AT&T Internet Fiber. We recently installed that as a backup for city internet connection, which we've had to use a couple times when WOW had some connection issues. So that's been kind of a great help. The only change I will need to make on the WOW internet line item is increase it from 3,000 to 10,000. And before anybody freaks out, it's actually for 2 connections. One, we'll be connecting our main internet service here at the city to fiber. WOW is now offering fiber internet connections for businesses. So our speed will greatly increase. But the second is they have graciously allowed us to install their internet at a reasonable cost for Merchants Park. So we'll be using that for primarily for our security cameras there. And then that will also allow us to offer Wi-Fi in the park there. But for roughly about $400 a month, it was great because I know public safety was concerned with some of the issues that could occur at the splash pad. And this solved the problem without extending out the city network, which estimates were at $30,000 to $40,000. So I think this is a good compromise for that. The rest
And Stan, when I asked real quick, so that's actually, so then next year it will also increase. That's the ongoing annual thing.
Yes, correct.
7,000. Okay.
Yeah, so total it'll be 10,000. It's roughly $400 a month per location. The rest of it, telephone slightly increased. Now that I have a part-timer, Harrison, we're finding that we're going in two different directions. So trying to reach him can be a challenge. So we're going to issue him a city-issued cell phone. Professional development, those are my standard 3 conferences, which technically will be in person as of right now. We have not, obviously they haven't decided, but as a firm decision, but right now, all the emails I've received that they are tentatively setting up for in-person conferences. Next on page would be page 65 digitally. Capital purchases, PC equipment, which is on the previous page. Replacement of any unscheduled or new hires that could potentially happen. I kind of want to be prepared just in case we're not scrounging around for money for any new hires potentially next year. Wireless equipment, some of our wireless equipment will need to be upgraded for security reasons. So I'm scheduling that. Security equipment for City Hall. We're in the process right now after the backlog and delay from COVID, upgrading the security system in public safety and kind of starting to extend it out to the buildings. And City Hall is up first. The phone system, we're going to be upgrading our connection also to fiber for that. The phone system will need some add-on modules to accommodate those connections. The HWPR connections, those are Huntington Woods and Pleasant Ridge. Now that we have the system, we'll be routing some of their lines through our phone system for some cost savings, so we can eliminate some extra telecommunication costs. And the last one is public safety and library firewall replacement. Currently, that's a placeholder due to the fact that our current firewall manufacturer was bought by a private equity firm last year, along with some other manufacturers. There are some concerns that they're going to merge and maybe create a super security company. There hasn't been any real information or anything about that, but my concern is that I might have to switch vendors if things are not going the way that I feel they should as far as in the security arena. So I just want to be prepared that if we have to shift gears, that we'll be able to buy a replacement firewall for the library and for the city. Otherwise, I think that's about it. Any questions, comments? Bridget?
Thanks. Yeah. I just want to thank you for the work that you do, keeping the network secure and things running smoothly, but really good job on the WOW fiber for Oxford Merchants Park, which will be renamed soon. But that's a really critical piece at a significant savings for the city. So thank you for that.
Yeah, the that project just came out of the blue. They've been offering in other areas because WOW is multi-state. Literally, the account manager kind of called and said, "Are you interested?" And it's like, yes. I mean, it was a no-brainer. Similar products from other companies we quoted out would be in the $1,000 to $2,000 price range. I think $400 is pretty reasonable to offer some security, and of course, Wi-Fi in the park doesn't hurt either. So
Exactly. And I remember when that fiber was, when it was the moment for that to go in and laying the conduit and all that stuff. So it's just great to see that happen and to happen at such a nice savings and a nice deal for the city. It's kind of serendipitous, but I'm glad that we were able to get in on that. So thanks.
Yes. Great.
Any additional questions, comments for Stan? Stan, my only question is in terms of where we are from a information technology capability as a city. What are maybe the biggest things in the future that we're going to need to make sure that we really spend some time and take a look at? I know you haven't been able to attend the conferences last year, maybe they were virtual, but what are some of the bigger trends that we should see in your world, or that we need to focus on?
Well, I can tell you before COVID, they were much different than after COVID. I think the big thing is the virtual space as far as meetings. I don't think those are going to go away anytime soon. So as far as kind of teleconferencing, that kind of flows into the work from home. I know that the city manager's office has talked about employee retention, and I've even talked about it at a county level with some of my Oakland County colleagues, that they're looking at more kind of work from home, remote. It was anecdotally mentioned that Chipotle posted that they have a management plan that you can make up to $100,000 managing a store in a matter of 3 to 4 years. So we're competing against, retail and a lot of different areas that can sometimes offer bigger and better salaries. The other main thing is the digitizing of paper. I think talking to Matt and Tori, we've definitely looked at hopefully improving and changing processes, not only to the residents but internally. And I know the city manager's office has already started doing some project management tracking and things like that. And overall, I think services, once we start changing processes internally, it's going to be a natural flow to have the residents kind of reap those benefits.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. At first, we were talking about virtual work from home, and you brought up Chipotle, and I thought that was going to be a real tough business model for them to go 100% virtual. I was really not sure where that was going for a minute. I appreciate the way that it ended.
Yes.
I think the first thing that you started with, that pre-COVID and post-COVID, very different things. Pre-COVID, the working from home and the virtual technology to meet, teleconferencing was something that only really happened when people were in different states and couldn't drive even a couple of hours before it wouldn't have been an issue to head up north or head somewhere else. Now we can be a lot more efficient. I think we've learned that over the last year, that we can still be efficient and productive in a virtual setting as well. And that's just goes to show so much has changed over the past year, and I'm sure a lot has changed in the information technology space, where all that innovation now and research is being put into ways to effectively, keep people safe. The cybersecurity, obviously, that comes with virtual meetings and teleconferencing and being able to be as connected as we are now. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Stan.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Now, based on what happened to that pipeline out east, Stan, where they got ransomware, where do we stand? Are we prepared for something like that?
Yeah, currently we're using kind of an AI-based endpoint protection. I wouldn't call it antivirus anymore. the software starts looking at how the programs, interact versus, the standard, virus, that sort of thing. Using Google, there is some aggressive filtering. Unfortunately, we found that out when some of our emails from residents were kind of held up for potential spam. So we are kind of adjusting the spam filter on that because it can be sometimes a little bit too sensitive. Our backup appliance that's within the building or within public safety, that is on the network, but due to the fiber that we have, we're doing cloud backups literally within minutes now just because of the speed. So everything on a daily basis at the end of the night is backed up to the cloud. So even if the server, not ransomware wise, but even physically was somehow damaged or anything like that, that we'll have a full and complete backup every night. So
good, thank you.
All right. Well, our library director turned his camera on a couple minutes ago thinking it was go time, so I don't want to make him wait any longer. We will now head into item number D. And Mr. Church, we will hand it over to you. Which page would you like us to begin on?
We'll start on 54 for the PDF and 55 for printed. I'll just start with a few remarks. So obviously this has been a crazy year, stating the obvious there. So there's some uncertainty here in terms of some of the projections or what we have on the horizon. I will say for our revenue projections, I've cut a lot of the usage revenue in half, just as a best guess. So looking at things like overdue fines, copier fees, replacement cost of lost items, things like that. I've just tentatively cut those in half. We do have our state aid that continues to come in. We have our penal fines that continue to come in, and then we have our endowment for the library that continues to come in as well. And then hopefully the following year, looking at 22-23, then we'll start to see those usage revenues back where they were previously, hopefully life more back to normal. In terms of big projects on the horizon, for the upcoming fiscal year, we're looking at painting, interior and exterior painting of the library. This project was actually approved the previous fiscal year, but was canceled due to COVID, and it wasn't rolled forward or anything like that, just left the money on the table. So this will allow us to move forward with that project. We'll bid them all at once, inside and outside painting, and then hopefully get a better price for that. We'd also be looking at reupholstering 14 lounge chairs in the library. That project has been deferred for a couple of years. So we'll try to make that happen now. I have tried to create some balance between the various fiscal years with our larger projects, just so that we don't have any huge spikes year to year. The big projects for 22-23 would be recarpeting the library. So we have done the teen room and the youth storytime room, recarpeting as smaller projects. This would knock out the remainder of the carpet in the facility. Some of our carpet is original to the renovation expansion 20 years ago. So it's still generally in pretty good shape, though. We get it cleaned twice a year, and then obviously vacuumed regularly beyond that. Not formally in the budget numbers that we're seeing here, but in the longer range plan, we do have a full HVAC replacement. That would be the big project on the horizon. But I am encouraged that our new HVAC contractors said that the equipment is in pretty good shape. He didn't look at it and, express concern right away at its condition. So new company coming in, we'll see how they do over the next couple quarterly maintenance cycles, see if they identify any big issues or concerns. All right, so now 54 on the PDF, 55 in the print. So we have, about a year ago, we merged two of our part-time youth librarian positions, each 28 hours, into one full-time youth librarian position. So in terms of staff work hours, we lost 16 hours in that transition. But what we gained is hopefully an employee who will be more likely to stay in Berkeley and stay here with the library. So we're excited to have a full-time employee as our youth librarian now. There will be a budget adjustment update here from Mark and Lori. We had a miscommunication about two vacant positions at the library. We still are keeping those positions. They're actually currently posted right now. So Lori projected that the increase for part-time employees would be 51,000, and then for the following fiscal year, 52,600. So those aren't new positions, they're just positions that have been vacant. So we've actually been under in terms of our expenditures, just kind of coasting without a couple staff as we've been closed. So I'll just continue to scroll through the page here. Again, no big changes, no big adjustments here in terms of what we're doing. Some of our costs have been lower since we're not open to the public. Things like toilet paper, printer expenses, toner, things like that. We're not using as much since we don't have the public in the building. Books and periodicals continue to be an important expense. The cost on some of those, unfortunately, increases as their frequency decreases. So publications are switching more to quarterly or every other month, and then the print cost is increasing on those. We're not really adding a lot of new subscriptions just because the demand isn't there as much for those. Downloadable content, I am requesting an increase in that. We've seen a lot of growth in the last year and a half. I've mentioned this when we talked about the library's annual report. More people using our downloadable services. Libby continues to be very popular. We do buy licenses to provide additional titles to Berkeley patrons there. So Overdrive continues to be very popular. And then we added Canopy for another digital streaming service. And then Hoopla continues to be well used as well. We increased the monthly cap there during COVID, and people have responded very positively to that. Program supplies continue to be put to good use. Throughout the closure, we've done a lot of take-home kits. So people stop by the library, pick up a kit or an activity and take that home. So we've been able to do more of that. I'm very grateful for the response there. People seem to really like that. Our program supplies contributions, that is mainly funded by the Friends of the Library and other donations that we receive. Vibe Credit Union, for example, is sponsoring again our summer reading program. This year they'll be covering all of the programs since we're doing fewer due to COVID. So thankful for their continued support and certainly the Friends of the Library. For memberships, the Michigan Library Association, that's an organizational membership for us. Custodial services, we are on the city's contract for custodial, so that was bid out about a year ago. Do-All is our current provider. Unique Management is the collection agency. We've currently suspended collection agency activity. Most libraries have, just with all the uncertainty right now. So it's possible that that count could be lower as we move forward. We have a hosted event calendar, which manages our program registration. And so that's just an annual maintenance fee for that. So now I'm on to page 56 or 57. TLN is our library cooperative. Very grateful for them and all the services they provide. We have a new director in the cooperative, and I feel like he's kind of helping take the cooperative to the next level. They are responsible for all of our shipment of materials between libraries. They make our interlibrary loan possible. They host our ILS system. They host our patron database, our catalog, all of that. So they allow us to do a lot more than what we would be able to do on our own as a smaller library. So just skimming down the list here, not a lot of changes. Utilities, obviously, no big changes there. Building maintenance on page jumps over to 57 and 58. No big changes there. That's just our continued maintenance on the facility. Thankfully, we haven't had any big things come up this year with the facility. Office equipment maintenance, that's our copier, and then just repairs of any of our technology or equipment. Professional development is underspent this year just because a lot of conferences have been canceled, but hopefully we'll be able to get back to those, if not this fiscal year, then certainly the following. We have done some virtual conference or professional development things this year. I've already mentioned the building improvements that are planned for the next 2 years. And let me take a look here. So now we're on page 58, 59. The book budget continues to stay the same. I did decrease the rented materials budget slightly, just to hopefully offset a little bit of the downloadable content as people shift what they're interested in and what their priorities are. That concludes the library section. Happy to entertain any questions.
Before the questions, Matt, your department, I would say you and Parks and Rec obviously are the most directly impacted by not having residents able to come in and frequent the library. And we talked about this when you presented the annual report, but you and your staff have continued to do a tremendous job of serving our community in a completely different world than any of us ever planned for. The fact that patrons have not been able to visit, but you've still been able to have materials, whether it's downloadable, the pickups that you're doing, the deliveries that you've done, all of those things have been incredibly impactful in our community, and our residents are certainly appreciative. And your budget, again, as you mentioned at the outset, 50% maybe on the revenue side of things, because we don't know what it's going to look like when things are going to open up. And even when things do open up, is everybody going to feel comfortable coming back right away? There may be a little bit of a continued lag, but being able to pivot and make sure that you have the resources digitally that residents desire has been absolutely incredible. We're very appreciative of the work that you and your staff have done and continue to do to move our library into the future. Despite things being digital, the library is not going to go away. It's always going to be an important hub in our community, and hopefully all communities, but certainly here, and continuing to bring us into the future is something that you should certainly be commended for. And there's just so much uncertainty regarding your budget. So,
right.
A comment. Are there any questions or other comments for our library director? Councilmember Price? Natalie, go ahead.
Sorry, there you go. More comment than a question, but Director Church, I remember at a library board meeting before COVID, we were talking about those study rooms and your vision for them. And of course, I understand why the project was delayed, but I was very pleased to see it on here for next year. In the conferences that I've attended with the National League of Cities and the MML, when the experts talk about what has changed in the long term after this pandemic, they all talk about more people working from home, but still looking for that community, that placemaking. And I see these individual study rooms as a fantastic resource for so many people working from home to be able to take a few hours away from their home, but still be able to be productive in a space like the library, a third space where they can feel comfortable and supported and a little bit of connection with other people. So anyway, I'm very pleased that those are on here and that we are looking forward to a future and finding ways to support our residents now that
Yes.
COVID has changed their lives. So thank you.
Right. Yeah, thank you. The study room project is one that we are definitely excited about. It would create 4 study rooms, so individual meeting space, 2 people could get together, and it would just help separate the use of the library. Right now, it's just kind of one large room, and this would give a place for somebody to tutor someone in a small space, someone to take a phone call and work a little more privately. So we're excited about it, but certainly kicked it down the road a little bit given the the budget realities with COVID. So thanks for mentioning that.
Mayor Pro Tem Bean?
Yes, thank you, Matt. I couldn't help but think when you said a smaller space for someone to take a phone call and work more privately. Of course, Mike Dean came directly at the forefront of my mind. So thanks in advance for that.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt,
yes, thank you all.
being with us this evening. And before we move into public safety, we are about, sorry, Chief, you just flipped on your camera too. We're about halfway through our agenda this evening, at least in terms of time. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Normally in budget sessions, we kind of get up and walk around a little bit. Give us 5 minutes. We will start public safety at 8:05. All right. It is 8:05, and it appears that those of us that want to turn our cameras on have them turned back on. See, the chief is with us and ready to go. Chief, how many more fire trucks would you like?
Well, none. We're good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Whenever you are ready, Chief, tell us where to start.
First of all, based upon the last conversation, is it too late to call the park Stan Park sponsored by WOW? Is it too late to suggest that or no?
There is a hard and fast no usage of a name rule, because all of my names were summarily thrown out because somebody's name was in them, and it wasn't always mine either, I promise.
Okay, let that one go then. And I used to be a detective, so I can kind of follow clues, and this is my fourth budget, and the first words out of your mouth, Mayor, when I got done is we're behind schedule, so I'm going to try to talk less. So if I skip over anything you want me to explain, please do, because I've got quite a few pages here. So let me know if I'm going too fast, and we're on page 27.
I've got us blocked out until 10, Chief. I've got a whole hour allotted for you.
Okay, good. Let her rip then. I think we're ready. Under the admin account, there's really no changes to that. Everything's pretty much the same. Unless there's any questions, it's pretty much the same as last year. Okay, we'll skip over to page 29, which is dispatch and service aids. There's a couple things I wanted to highlight in there. For one, I think we're going to be able to save some money. Lori, unless you already have this, Stan and I talked earlier today. Apparently, we both budgeted $10,000 for phone upgrades for Huntington Woods and Pleasant Ridge under 982-000. So we can take out that $10,000 because that's the same $10,000 that Stan has in his account. Good. Okay. We did notice there's a typo where it says in line under building improvements dispatch 306, the door control actually controls a pedestrian doors, not pedestal doors. So that's been corrected.
Mm-hmm.
A couple electrical upgrades for the new radio system, and we're actually going to make it to where we can access our antenna from the conference room / EOC. So you'll see a couple of line items in there for that. Dispatch call station replacement, that's actually $55,000 for next year. I just wanted to point out that's a Clemis mandated. Our hardware and software has to be replaced, so there's really not too much we can do about it. And then I'm on to page 31, which is just really the synopsis for the account. And unless there's any questions, that's all I had to point out for that. Okay, I'll move up to animal control. And I have nothing highlighted there. We're pretty much everything's the same. We did the vehicle, which was actually budgeted 2 years ago, was actually finished up this last fiscal year. So we had a little bit of a carryover there, but we're pretty much the same in that. And we are also providing services now for Huntington Woods, and also starting hopefully June 2nd of Pleasant Ridge also. Any questions on animal control? Okay, we'll move forward to page 34. And on 34, I don't have anything highlighted unless somebody has any questions in any of anything that's on page 34. Okay, go down to page 35. Another page where I have nothing highlighted unless somebody has a question. Pretty much standard.
If I have a quick question.
Sure.
On the ammunition, the training ammunition, have we completely switched over on that? I'm sorry, I forgot. I know we've had the conversation. I couldn't remember.
We did. Well,
okay.
We are getting, as far as our vendor goes?
Yes.
Yes, we are getting it all from Michigan Ammo. And quite honestly, they got it for us a lot quicker than we anticipated. And it sounds like a lot of departments are doing that now too.
Great. Okay, thanks a lot.
Sure. Any other questions on page 35? Then on page 36, I again don't have anything highlighted unless there's any questions.
Just pleased to see that the golf outing is back in the recommended budget, and I saw that email go out for, I believe it's July. Is that when I saw?
26.
Yeah, towards the end of July. Yes. Well, Drew knows that it's always a Monday is fine. Let's hope it's not on a council meeting Monday. God bless him.
Yeah, there's going to be some problems.
Chief, I had a question. I see the K9 program on here. Any, I know that we're a budget conversation here tonight, but how are we doing in terms of getting the funds that we need to kick this program off? I know a few of us on council were some of the earliest adopters and supporters of the crowdfunding campaign to help move this along. It's a super exciting project, and I'm sure there's more additional ways that we can help promote it. Any updates? Do you think we're going to make the mark and get this moving forward? Any just quick comments you can offer in terms of the K9 program?
Yes, I'm glad you said that. First of all, we're in the second week of training. Both the handler and the dog are doing very well. First week's kind of challenging while they get to know each other, but it's going very well. My former co-worker from Farming Hills, who's also K9 handler, was down there today and said how great the dog's doing. But to answer your question, we actually have really good news. If you look at our funding page, it shows us just over $10,000. However, a lot of the contributions we have received have not made it, or we've also had some that have been. We're told that we're getting, from good sources that we're getting substantial contributions. So we believe we're over $50,000 now, including a $25,000, and maybe I'm drawing a blank. Either Jordan or Tori can maybe help me out. A nonprofit came in last week and presented us a check for $25,000. So we think we're over $50,000 already. So we're in really, really good shape. And even a lot of the contributions that came in through checks through our department have not made the account yet either. So we're in great shape.
That's
fantastic. Because at the end of, in April, we had almost 22,000. And then I know just, putting money in, doing the bank recs and stuff, there's a lot of contributions coming in.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Both that nonprofit, they actually contacted us. It's a Berkley resident who is on the board of directors, and just out of the blue, here's $25,000. So we're making great headway there.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. You can see one of my canines is around here somewhere, and I'm really pleased that we've added such a tremendous talent to our team. Kudos again to you folks all for this great program. I'm super excited about it. It's really cool.
Oh, great.
When did you get the dog? Because I know when we had a meeting before, you were having problems at being out of the country and all of that.
A week ago Sunday. So they went down to Ohio, picked the dog, brought him back, started training the next day. And there's a real structured, there's a K9 fan right there. It's a real structured process where, he couldn't even bring the dog into the station at first. He couldn't let the dog even meet his family at first. So they slowly socialized both with the handler, other dogs, and with the family. So it's been just over a week or just over 2 weeks? I believe it's been just over 2 weeks, but it's going really well.
Fantastic.
My brother, Chief, actually goes to school in Ohio, and he called me because he said, "Hey, Berkley Public Safety's down here." He was really nervous, thought you guys were looking for him. And I said, no, don't worry about it. They're not looking for you, not just leaving the jurisdiction. There is certainly a reason for that. And he mentioned the K9 unit was there, which was picking up.
You'll see the car out now because he has taken the car back and forth to training and getting the dog accustomed. So it's been going very, very well. And if I can backtrack a little bit, Stan, did I take out money I shouldn't have taken out of the account?
Yes, because of the confusion with projects.
I didn't save $10,000.
Yeah, the $10,000 is for the rewiring and replacement of the phones in the jail cells, the holding cells, because the company that was currently servicing them went out of business. So we are going to bring it in-house and take care of it ourselves instead of kind of outsourcing it. So
I think I had the wrong note in there is what happened. That $10,000 is still needed. I just had the wrong note.
Right. Yep. No problem.
So I apologize. That was on me, Lori.
So leave that in.
Please. Thanks for catching that, Stan. Then moving on to page 37, I've got a note down towards the bottom of the page, data processing. You'll see there's a substantial substantial increase in that. We tried to move all of our data processing items into that one account. So we moved the Traffic Cloud, Power DMS, Armor Link, Guardian Tracking, and Target Solutions all from other accounts. That's why you'll see a little bit of a increase there. You'll see a reduction in some of the other accounts.
Just a quick question there. The crime mapping and website portion, is that going to be public facing?
It is. We've actually we've been working on that project for quite a while. The risk you have in a smaller city is it basically plots on a map any crime that you wish it to, and it's so specific that we're worried about giving away people's privacy. Obviously we don't want domestic disputes on there, but even some of the other crimes. So we're working on trying to make a good mix. I know the city I came from, if you looked at our map, it just looked like the city was riddled with crime. There were so many different dots on the map. But to answer your question, yes, it will be public facing. We just have to decide which crimes we want to make sure that it shows the public.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And moving over to page 38, which includes the data processing, the first couple items. And I have no other highlights for the rest of the page unless somebody has a question. And then moving over to page 39, one big building project we want to tackle this next fiscal year is the water leak we have in the basement. We've made a lot of good headway this year between the dispatch renovation, the roof's finally fixed, the lobby's being renovated right now. We've switched over to almost all LED lights except for the basement. So we've made a lot of good headway, but what we have to work on is the leak we have in the electrical conduit in the basement, which feeds City Hall. So we're really concerned that, we're on a generator. If we lose electricity, we're on a generator, but City Hall isn't. And since we feed them, we have to work on that. So I know Corey's been talking to a lot of people trying to figure out the best way to do that. And that's one project that we'll be working on this year as far as the building goes. And then moving down towards the bottom of the page, if you look in fire truck maintenance, we're projecting that we'll be quite a bit over budget. The reason for that is when the old ladder and the engine were both damaged during the fire hall renovation, the city received an $87,000 insurance settlement. We spent $30,000 out of that in vehicles to buy Squad 4. The remainder of that money will be spent repairing engine 4, which is actually right now at our service provider. It's been there for a couple weeks now and probably be there for 2 or 3 more weeks at least. And then some retrofits to the squads. So we did have revenue to cover that, but we'll show over budget this fiscal year for that. And moving over to page 40. At the very bottom, well, first of all, if there's any questions on the top of the page, but I have a highlight down on the bottom of the page. Our HVAC is very, very end of life. We've got a preliminary estimate of $315,000, which we think is a good cost. We did have another company give us an estimate that was substantially higher than that, but our new vendors thinking that that's basically doable. So we're going to be taking that on, hopefully in the fall. One of the issues we're going to have is we are not going to have an HVAC system. And Corey may have to correct me, but I believe it's for at least 4 weeks we will have nothing. So we want to time in the fall when it's not too warm and not too cold, kind of like Goldilocks, and get it done to where it's not going to affect us too much. And there's some things they can do to help us out through that, but that's the major project for next year. And then we did push back a prox card entry system to the building. And I see there's a note at the very bottom of the page. The very last note was moved back. So that should read 2223 that I just caught. And then flipping over to the top of page 41.
One question.
Go ahead.
A question on that previous page. We had discussed the reimbursable professional development. I think
Yes. Did I skip over that? Oh, I'm sorry, I did have that highlighted. Yes, that was a typo. If you look on reimbursable professional development, we went from $80,000 to $8,000. There was a zero missing there, so we project that will be the same. And that is all the officers that have told us they intend to take classes, and life happens, and we typically don't hit that number, and really even that close to that number. But we do want to budget for everybody taking the classes. And as you know, I really encourage education and training, so I encourage our people to take as many classes as they can and get their degrees. So thanks for catching that. I missed that one. And then top of page 41, you know, our major this year, the renovation for the lobby, which you can't see it from the outside, but that wall is down now where the entire entrance was before, and the airlock is gone now, and it really, really makes a huge difference. I didn't realize how big the lobby is with that gone, and we'll try to get some pictures and post them on our page here in the near future. But that was not budgeted. That was to use a CDBG funds. So we've adjusted it for that project. And we have a couple things we're looking at doing next year. You know, wellness is a huge priority, both physically and mentally. So we're looking, if you've been in our basement, I know several of you have, it's more like a dungeon than a basement. We want to increase the lighting and try to make it usable space instead of a basement where you just, you know, throw your junk to get rid of and just get it out of the way. So we've done a lot of cleaning, gotten rid of a lot of things down there. So we're just trying to take that up to the next level.
Chief, I think it's just want to make sure you know each part of the HVAC system as well is to make some improvements to feed the basement for temperature and humidity control. So it'll be slightly expansion on the existing system to accommodate these activities down there.
For sure. And we've got some plans to actually really open that up. And my goal and hope is it'll be substantially less than we initially thought it would be, also mostly because of the ideas that our people have on how to make that more usable space.
Chief, for people who haven't been down there, can you just list a few of the activities that are currently used in the basement?
Sure, that's our property room is down there. Our record storage room is down there. We do have some storage down there. And if you can picture an unfinished basement, that's what it looks like. If you go in, your basement is not finished, that's what our basement looks like right now. So we'd like to, you know, doesn't need a lot of, you know, it doesn't have to be like a finished basement, but we want to paint the walls. We're actually planning on moving our property room from one section of the basement to another to open up our fitness room. Our fitness room's down there, and that's basically a caged area with obsolete equipment in it that we're looking to upgrade. Our range is down there. And I think if you look at an old, you know, 80s, well, I'd go even further back, an old 40s basement that's unfinished, that's what it looks like. Not very good lighting. We want to upgrade to LED lighting. It's dark, it's damp, it needs work.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
Chief, thank you for that, and thank you, Natalie, for that question. Because when you had you described it earlier as more of a dungeon than a basement, I was thinking, well, there's a solution in case we have prisoner overflow kind of issues. You know, we've got a spot right there. But you know, you helped us better understand not only what there is now for those of us that haven't seen it, but also what your vision is for it. So that's cool, and you'll have to figure out a different place to store the Iron Maiden, I suppose.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then moving on to page 41, those were at the top of the page. I don't have anything else highlighted unless somebody else has a question on page 41. You go down to page 42. One thing on the kind of get on the radar for next year is our tasers are approaching end of life. So we need to do pretty much a wholesale change over our tasers. So that's about $85,000. We'll get a more firm price when we get there. Next line down is radio equipment. As you recall, we did purchase about $75,000 worth of radio equipment earlier this fiscal year. Our plan is to purchase the remainder next fiscal year after July 1st on this budget in preparation for switch over to the P25 radio system. So we're actually putting together an order right now, and we budgeted $75,000 is another one. I'm hoping that we're going to be less than that number, even substantially less than that number. So that's another big project we're working on. Seem to have as part of the budget, quite a few of the bigger projects. Our SCBA equipment is probably past end of life, and I probably don't need to exchange or explain if we have a failure of our SCBA equipment, either in training or in a fire. I mean, it's probably fatal. I mean, I don't like to use the term safety issue very often, but this definitely is a safety issue. Corey's been doing a great job purchasing parts off eBay to keep our current equipment in order. We do have some good news. We did submit for a grant with Beverly Hills, Farmington, Bloomfield Hills, and Huntington Woods, I believe. And let me know if I missed somebody, Corey. But for the first time ever, they asked us some follow-up questions on our grant. In the past years, they haven't said we didn't get the grant. They just said they ran out of money. So we think it's a good thing that they actually asked us some questions. But the bottom line is we have to replace this equipment in the next few months. We're hoping to hear something on the grant in the next couple of months. And if that happens, I believe it's an 80-20 match. It'll be substantially less money for the city if we get that grant. But it is something that needs to be done very soon. So we're optimistic. We're hoping to hear something in the near future.
Just to clarify, Chief, this is one of the things that we got at a grant. We got them 15 years ago. And when you get them all on a grant and they have a definite shelf life, they all expire at the same time. So that's why we're in this boat, and hopefully we'll get the grant.
Yes. Yeah, it's the first time we got a question. So I consider that good news, unless they're just leading us on, but hopefully not. I don't know why they do that. A little cynical. And then next line down, one thing I did want to point out, and Jack, you probably know this, every few years they change the configuration of the cars, and the Ford UVs, they change the configuration in 2020, and we're replacing cars that are older than 2020, which means a little bit of an increased cost when it comes to the center consoles and computer mounts, things like that. But pretty much our normal replacement. Getting down to car computers, and Councilmember Hennanen, I realize now why you asked the question you did. I didn't get it at first because I had the wrong note in there, and I asked Lori to correct that today. That first note for 21-22 should say purchase of one in-car computer, and then the next 2 fiscal years, we're replacing the rest of them.
Chief, another question for you.
Sure.
I see that you're going to pickup trucks. What's the rationale for going to pickup trucks rather than the cars?
That would be for administrative staff that carry a lot of equipment. And when we actually go before you, I thought about getting some photos today, but I thought it'd be a little overkill. But if you look in the back of some of our cars with the amount of equipment we carry, not only for ourselves, but for the, because those vehicles are at every emergency in the city and a lot of times outside the city. So we carry a lot of equipment, and there's basically not enough room in the UVs for it, and it's unsafe. Our fire equipment after a fire ends up going in the back of the car. Now we'll have a separate bed to put it in. It's a sterile cab. And Corey's on the technical rescue crew. We have people on the hazmat team. I'm on OCAC. We're looking at the IMT also. So there's just physically not enough room. Quite honestly, if I had to get to my rifle in a hurry, it would probably take me about 15 minutes. It's buried underneath, locked up in a lockbox underneath. So we want to be able to make sure we can get to the equipment, and also they have equipment not just for ourselves, but other members of the department.
Thanks for the explanation.
Sure. And then flipping over to page 43 is just pretty much just some SCBA. This is where we get the replacement parts from. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Chief, I see Corey and Jordan, I believe, are with us as well. Weren't sure if they had anything to add in or to add to the discussion. I know you referenced them a couple of times. I didn't see either of them jump in with comments, so maybe they're. Oh, look at that. Corey's even going to turn his camera on. Look at this guy.
Oh, there you.
He doesn't have a softball game tomorrow to hide from, so he's going to put his face on camera. I like it.
No, I'll just piggyback on what Chief said about the SCBA grant. This is very encouraging news for us. Basically, they're asking for clarification of our equipment. So since we're end of life, there's no joke. I am purchasing stuff off eBay to keep them running. I can't get new parts for these. It's tough. We've been doing it for about 2 years now, which is good that I can still get parts off eBay, used parts that are still in working order, but we're putting used parts on life-saving equipment. So I have about 350 days left of 38 bottles. I've got 12 bottles that can't be used anymore out of our 48 bottles. So we're end of life, knowing that this time was going to be coming. So anyways, the FEMA has reached back out to our group and wanted some clarifying information, serial numbers for the equipment and so on, which through our conversations with grant writers and peer review people, this is a very good sign. Not a definite, but it's a very good sign. And the initiative this year, or this round of grants, is personal protective equipment. So this falls in line. Other grants or years past that we haven't received them, there's been other initiatives. So this falls right in line. And like Mr. Blanchard said, we bought them 15 years ago, and the bottles are only good for 15 years. So.
Well, let's hope the grant comes through. But even if the grant doesn't come through, this is not something that we want to continue playing the eBay game with. It's great that you've been able to do that and get some parts, but it's also not good at all that you have to go to eBay to get parts when we're talking about life-saving equipment here.
Right. And actually, we've been buying radios off eBay also for our current system, and that's how end of life that is too. But we're making it work, and Corey, Jordan, Drew have been doing a fabulous job, and so have all the people that work for us. They've really been doing a great job, especially this last year.
Any other questions for any of our members of the Public Safety Department that are here this evening? Well, we appreciate the work that you've done, and obviously, Chief, you highlighted some things, but there's also a number of things that we're able to stay the same. Certainly do a good job, you and the team, all the lieutenants, keeping the costs in perspective, doing what needs to be done from a safety perspective, not only your safety, but the safety of our residents, but also keeping a very close eye on the budget and fiscal concerns and being very responsible moving into the future. And look, we've talked about this before. When it comes to public safety, I mean, everything is certainly on the table. We're talking about the safety of whoever that person is that needs that call or that needs that assistance, the life-saving measures that everybody at the department takes. And it's something that we certainly enjoy the conversation and want to see how we can continue to support the safety of our residents and everyone that comes across the city of Berkeley. Anything that wasn't covered, Chief, that you haven't mentioned either in this year or next year's budget that you see as something to keep our eyes on for the future?
No, I think evolving technology, and I'm a big fan of technology, and unfortunately, we're pretty much a full-time job for Stan. He's over quite a bit because we have so much of it. But this last year, probably the most unusual year in my 35-year career with the pandemic, and a lot of things were going on, and the progress we made over the last year is just incredible. There was, I guess, for lack of a better term, we kind of took advantage of the pandemic because things kind of slowed down and we were able to get a lot of things done, a lot of building projects, a lot of our policies, a lot of new technology systems, thanks to the support of council and the city. We've really made a lot of headway. So, we really just want to continue to do that. We consider our building home, and we want to take care of our homes. So there's some things like the basement, like the locker rooms down the road. A couple of years down the road, we like to redo the locker rooms and do some other things just to take care of the building that, quite honestly, wasn't always taken care of.
Well, and you guys have done a great job. The Jordan Cobra Construction Company and everybody else who has, if they haven't seen what dispatch looks like now, I know with the pandemic, people haven't been traveling around as lot, and we don't generally do dispatch open house, but what that looks like now from what it did and the work that you guys were able to put in and the costs that you're able to save by providing a lot of the labor where they could on their own. And, we saw the same thing upstairs in the EOC. Those are rooms to be extremely proud of now, not only for folks that work there, but it gives our city a much better look when people come from other departments and I assume the same thing will continue to happen with the basement and other projects where we can be efficient and do some labor. Your department has certainly shown they're willing to do that.
Yeah, we sure are. And I should say the people too. We really want to take care of our people. And that is the wellness program we're looking at that Jordan's been spearheading. Like I said, both physical and mental, because there is a lot of stress in this job, and I'm seeing it from our people here, especially the last year or so.
Certainly. Well, thank you, Chief. We appreciate you and the rest of your folks that were with us this evening, and Corey for turning on your camera and telling us a little bit more about the SCBA and hopefully what's going to happen there. We now move into F, which is probably the most important budget item that we will discuss this evening, City Council.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be presenting this on behalf of administration. Looking at this largely goes unchanged from year to year, but there are a couple of highlights I'd like to point out. Unfortunately, requests for raises had to be denied this year for City Council, and I do apologize for that. So that is pretty consistent with what we've had in the years past. I do want to highlight.
What page are we on, Matt?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. It is page 8 on the document and 7 on the virtual copy.
Thank you. All right.
All right, and on that page, I do want to highlight meetings and conferences. We are hoping to return to a somewhat normal schedule of meetings and conferences and professional development for the members of council here. So after a bit of a dip this past year for very obvious reasons, we are proposing a slate of trainings for council to take advantage of over the course of the fiscal year. It results in about 10,445 and then 12,895 in the 2 subsequent years. And you'll see the breakdowns of how we get to that point. It's not a lot of new for us, but it's going to be a nice return to normal from what we've done in the past. Excited to be able to include work sessions in there. That's something that we have not had the opportunity to do during the pandemic portion. Times like these are certainly nice when we can all be on the screen together. But we do look forward to returning to the brainstorming atmosphere of having us all in the same room together and plotting out things like vision, mission, goals, ordinances, just kind of the vision that you would like the administration to proceed on. And those are really the 2 big items there. This fund mainly concerns payment for council and then meetings and conferences. So if are there any questions on those 2 particular items?
I also disagree with the raises for council, just FYI. I got a no vote for me as well.
All right, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. With your permission, I can move on to the next one.
Let's keep going.
Okay, that would be page 10 on the document, 9 on the electronic version, the city manager account. Under full-time salaries, I want to call attention to a project that we've been talking about for a while. This would be the addition of a facilities manager to the city manager's office. We debated back and forth on the best place to house this particular employee. But the theme that we've been going with the manager's office is that positions that are of service to all departments, such as communications, IT, policy development, that would be appropriately housed in the city's manager's office. That is the reason you find that in this particular account here. We are proposing a salary of $60,000. We think that is consistent with some of our where our surrounding communities are based on our size, and then what are some of our comparables were as well. So we're excited to add that, and I know it's going to be a major relief to many of our department heads who, as I've said in the past, in addition to being experts in their own fields, have been called upon to be general contractors for projects in the past as well. One of the other portions of this position that we're excited about as well is this will be the individual that will be tasked with sustainability functions of our community as well. So this will be the point person for seeing and implementing the energy plan that was adopted by council as well. So this managing the utilities, energy efficiency projects, additions to our community. This will be a point person for working with EcoWorks, the nonprofit energy efficiency company that we've been partnering with now for about 3 years now at this point. There'll be a lot of positive benefits to this position. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get it into last year's budget, but we're very happy to propose it for you this evening. Moving down to part-time employees.
Hold on. Jack, go ahead.
A question for you, Matt. When we're doing maintenance on some of our buildings, would this individual be able to do construction management and supervision rather than having to hire somebody from HRC to do it?
That is our intent, yes, sir.
That'd be a cost saving then in the HRC budget. This individual could pick that up.
Yes, this will be the person that we would task with supervision of those projects.
Okay, good. That would save us some money in that account. Thank you.
We're hoping.
Bridget?
Thank you. Matt, you mentioned that the salary was $60,000. Is that lumped into these? I guess I couldn't see where that $60,000 salary was.
Correct, ma'am. That's why I was noting it. It's not specifically listed here, but it is lumped in with the other full-time employees that are housed under this department. So myself and Dan Hill.
And so where could we find a breakdown of that?
I could send that to you. It's not included in this document, but I could send that to you.
Thank you. That would be great. Thanks.
Steve?
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Matt, for this facilities manager position. I do agree that this will add a lot of value to the community and to efficiencies within City Hall. To what extent can this role extend itself and help out with DDA projects? I know that's a bit of a crossover there. Our DDA director is a full-time employee position, and as I think about a lot of the blocking and tackling of administering the projects, the brick and mortar initiatives, once those are underway, vis-a-vis the wayfinding projects, we've seen considerable delays, most of which were out of our control. But I'm thinking if somebody like this, who was well versed in managing projects and understanding contractors, when you use the expression our internal general contractor, that kind of rung the bell for me to say, oh, I just wanted to at least understand where the scope ends and begins with this role as you envision it. Do we see this person being able to help execute some of the DDA initiatives once they're off the ground and up and running and stuff like that? Because if so, that would again provide additional benefits not only to some of the other departments as already noted, but also to the DDA as well.
The short answer is yes, sir. We do intend this person to extend their services and knowledge out to the DDA as well. A position like this could help manage the construction project, like a Berkley Plaza project. There's been some discussion for a while about creating a pocket park downtown. This person could be of relief to both the recreation and the DDA as that project unfolds. So I would like to see that person be of service to both, to the DDA as well.
Excellent. Thank you. I love that. That's really great.
All right, I'll move forward to our part-time employees. We do propose adding 2 additional part-time employees as well. One in support of the city manager's office, actually working right outside my immediate vicinity there and working more secretarial in function to relieve our public policy coordinator or our public policy assistant, relieve that individual so they can focus more on some overarching projects instead of being strictly dedicated to some of the secretarial functions, which are currently still housed in that position because we have not backfilled that role. The other one would be in support of our communications or our community engagement officer. As Tori outlined earlier, the website is going to be a major lift. It's going to be it's going to take quite a bit of time, effort, energy. This person could work in relieving some of the functions that Tori currently does, working under her supervision, but to keep the communications going. Tori, some of the other things that we talked about was potentially creating graphics and some of the visuals that we utilize, things that Tori does for us now, but even as much of a force as Tori is, even the workload now can be overwhelming, and we haven't begun the website process yet. Okay. Then those are the items that I have to call it specifically on page 10 of the document. Most everything else is pretty straightforward, unchanged from years previous. The only other items on there is membership and dues. You'll notice on there, on the right of the last line, there's a line item for consultant. We've had 10,000 in our account up to the for this current fiscal year, but we don't have it in the 2 subsequent years. The consultant fee that we have is to cover the work that EcoWorks is doing for us now. So again, seeing that EcoWorks, we will not depend on them as much with the facilities manager in place. We feel pretty comfortable about zeroing out that account and then housing those functionalities under that individual. Moving on to page 11 of the document. Again, these are mostly out of our hands, both staff expenses, telephones really come from Stan and from finance. I do want to note on professional development, in years past, you would have seen a ICMA conference that I'm not planning to travel to the ICMA conference this year. It's not for any lack of desire or dislike of the host community. It's just one thing as we were looking to trim our budget a little bit. That was something that we felt like we could take a break on and then potentially pursue the year after, although next year is in Columbus. So I'm happy to skip that conference as well for what it's worth. That's Columbus, Ohio, Belly of the Beast. Again, we really feel like the state affiliate for the managers professional organization is fulfilling a fantastic need for best practices and sort of helping us gauge what the future of the profession looks like and what we as local management professionals should be preparing for. Moving down to furniture, equipment, as you see, we don't have anything in here. Those have largely been consolidated into the City Hall budget. So that brings us down to the total here. So proposed 298,908. You'll notice if you look all the way back to the first column in this page, it's pretty consistent with where we were 3 years ago as well, as we've moved some of these around, consolidated accounts, and changed our personnel. So I'm excited to deliver to you a functional budget, but one that, again, keeps the city's bottom line in mind as well. That's all for the manager's office, sir.
Any additional questions, comments for Matt in the manager's office? I think we spent some time talking about the things that obviously the facilities manager is something that we've talked about, and glad to see that coming to fruition, not only managing facilities, but also the project management aspect and being able to have those things much more in-house and saving some costs in other places. And will be used by every department in the city, and I think it makes sense certainly to house it in the city manager's office for the reasons that you mentioned. Any other questions on CMO before we move into City Hall? All right, well, let's move to City Hall.
All right. Okay, so let's see, page 22 on the document, page 21 in the virtual version. On the top, I want to note that this is, although it's named City Hall, you'll notice as we go through here that there are some items that are not specific to this building, but are house general projects that are benefits the community as a whole. And I'll note those as we go through here. So while sometimes you'll see, let's say, especially with the capital section, there looks like there's an increase, but that is not all specific to this building. And we had a long discussion on this with the Planning Commission as we were proposing our capital improvements plan as well. All right, moving into this, you'll see the first section, materials and supplies, pretty consistent with years past. There's not a lot of change there. This covers things like postage and program maintenance supplies. So we don't see foresee a big change there. Moving down, one place that we do see a larger change is the custodial project. As we recall, we switched vendors in the midst of 2020. That was at a higher cost than what we previously been using. Thankfully, so far, we've also seen a higher output as well. But I did want to note that increase. Next up, contractual services. We do allocate in the next 2 fiscal years a line item for a ballot initiative going before the voters that would potentially cover any number of issues. Community center, bonds, any of the things that we talked about. But this would be the fund that we would draw upon as we make our case to the community, offer materials, offer good information on what we hope to be the outcome of any sort of ballot initiative. So that is in for 25,000 and 15,000. The reason for the mismatch would be that the bulk of our conversation would happen in the lead up to a November or an August. So all it is, the vote would actually take place in the subsequent fiscal year. Most of the conversation will happen in the 21-22 fiscal year. I do want to note on that same one, there's 35,000 is in the projected activity. That is not going to happen. That's simply something that we had put forth to finance, but we did so with much earlier projections, and that's not going to come to fruition now. So we're actually anticipating 0 for projected activity for the current fiscal year. Moving down now to, I want to point out wayfinding. As you know, we'll be partnering with the DDA on this phase and the next phase for wayfinding signage. The phase 1 is mostly downtown signage, but phase 2, we're excited for some of the gateway signage, as well as changing out our park signage as well. That'll not only spruce up the front face of our parks, but also be able to reflect some of the name changes that council's already approved, and that will be coming before council soon. And then in 22-23, we have put a line item in there for this item, but it's unlikely that it stretches into that fiscal year. So that's most likely going to be 0 by the time it comes back to you guys next year for the budget. All right. Flipping the page now to 23 or 22 electronically. Moving down to our liability insurance, that stays pretty stable, but I do want to note we've been on a somewhat steady climb for that, both in our liability insurance as well as our workman's comp, both of which we work with the MML annually. They're a great partner in offering tips and tricks, best practices, you name it, on how to keep those numbers low. But we have had some claims that we've had to file this year, and so that's been reflected in some of the increased costs that we're seeing there. Telephone utilities, I want to note, has remained pretty consistent throughout. Again, as you know, I say that to say we're hoping to see some of those utility numbers start to fall with some of the improvements that we make through the energy plan, and also hopes that those savings would then be captured in the revolving loan fund that we have been discussing as well. Moving down to building demolition, I do want to note that we had previously purchased a property at Cummings, the first one off the commercial property. We did have that in the upcoming fiscal year, but are proposing to move that back a year, just given the financial picture that we're facing with the general fund. That is one of the ones that we think can appropriately be slotted backwards. We can still work on building consensus with the nearby property owners, potentially even some planning functions for that, but we wouldn't move forward with the actual demolition of the house that sits on that property itself until the likely summer of 21 after the new fiscal year. I'm sorry, summer of 22. My apologies.
Question on that?
Yes, sir.
In the past, we had the demo of the Cummings house in one year and the parking lot the next year. Now we've got them both in the same fiscal year, so the end result should be the same. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You should get the parking lot by the end of next budget year, a year from now. I mean,
from the end of the we were looking at it somewhere between July 1st, 2022, and June of 23.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Along those same notes, Mr. Baumgarten, the notion of although we are deferring the demolition costs, are there any incremental expenses required to maintain the property? Any upkeep, lawn care, those utilities, those kinds of things? Where are those accounted for? if it will remain basically as is for the next year and a half, those kinds of things. Where is that accounted for?
Utilities have been disconnected already, and our Department of Public Works has been tasked with mowing the grass so far. So it will be rolled into their normal activities.
All right, so we don't see a lot of incremental expense to maintain the property as is. We're just gonna just kind of leave the structure alone, and do our best to make sure that it's not a blight to the neighborhood. And then in the subsequent year, per your response to Councilman Blanchard's question, we'll demo it and build the and build the parking lot. Is that kind of the net effect of all this?
Yes, sir.
Cool. So it's probably not for tonight's conversation, but I would like to follow up with you to ensure that we have proper communications to the neighbors so that they understand. Certainly they know that this is city property and they know that we have plans to do this. And I'd just like to ensure that they are aware of our timing of when this project may commence at some point, because some of them are probably just happy to just see this thing just get over with, right? So anything we can do, I'm all about ensuring effective communications with the folks to ensure that everybody knows what's going on. So thanks again, not for now, but if there's a way you could share with council your thoughts on how we will keep the residents engaged to understand our plans there. So again, there's no surprises. I think that'd be super.
Yes, sir. And we did, we talked about this quite a bit internally about the pros and cons of going ahead and demoing the property and just having a vacant lot, grass growing and there's low upkeep. Have that go ahead and happen this year. Again, the cost is, $12,500 is projected cost. But having it open before the really starting the construction of the project, of the parking lot in the next subsequent year. Obviously, we can still do so. The demolition of the house is not a major cost driver. The part of the conversation too was, as Derek will note, tomorrow night there's a house over on Bacon that we're also interested in taking down as well. Again, pros and cons on doing the both of them at the same time as well. So we'd love to hear council's thoughts on potentially doing the demo in this year and the construction in the next year. Again, we were just trying to bring their general fund costs down as much as feasible.
Sure. So is that a conversation for now? It sounds like you just said that you were entertaining council's feedback on the plan to demo this year. If it's not budgeted for this year, then we can't talk about it for this year unless it's going to be a budget amendment down the road. Is that something you'd like us to comment on now, or is this going to be a budget amendment if the opportunity arises to revisit this before leaving it up there for another year and a half or 2 years?
With the mayor's permission, I defer to him, but I'd be open to that discussion this evening I think the work session might be a good spot to do it.
I do think it's something that we need to discuss. I would like to hear a little bit more from Derek, and I think we need to give council a little bit more time to think about this. Perhaps it's more of a work session at a council meeting where we have some more time. Make sure everybody has the opportunity, if they're not familiar with the residents in the house right now, to drive past it and kind of put themselves in the position of would I rather have this house or would I rather have just a field of grass and potentially dandelions next to me. So before I think we get into that discussion in a little bit more detail and make some recommendations, I think we should give ourselves a little bit more time, but know that it's something that we need to discuss and keep it on our radar.
Excellent. Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with that. I think it appeared as though the city manager opened the door to a conversation for at least a budget amendment at some point during this fiscal year. And I would be happy to entertain a conversation around any plans to expedite just taking a next step forward. I think, transitions are effective and having the ability to do what we can when we can makes a lot of sense. So thank you. I support the idea of at least entertaining an amendment down the road.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
That's the only other item to highlight on this particular page. Office equipment rental is again, these are items that we are pretty standard to our budget year over year. So then moving on to page 24 in the document, 23 on the electronic version. Professional developments. Again, this is, we continue to invest in our staff and bring forth relevance topic areas on generally a bi-monthly schedule for our staff to learn and grow from. We've fallen into sort of a two-stage cycle. We have one that's broadly for the organization, and then one that benefits the individual member, and then the next one is broadly for the organization. So an example of that is we have an upcoming one on leadership training and sort of staff empowerment. The one after that is on the individual benefits that the city offers to its employees as well. So you kind of see two of the ways that we try to help our employees grow and learn a little bit more about their organization and also what they can do themselves. Moving down here, again, sort of phase two of the conversation we were just having, land improvements, the parking lot itself, also slated for fiscal year 22-23. Again, we do see that as being a multi-year project. So this would be the first portion that gets the construction going here. And again, I forward to the rest of the conversation on that. Moving down then, one second, Dennis, go ahead.
I did just want to call out one part of the discussion we had that that seems like a large price tag, but it also includes stormwater improvements. And so I just wanted to, make that clear.
Yep. Yes, thank you. If you recall, Clinton River Watershed Advisory Council, we participated in their Water Towns program and received a presentation from their in-house expert, Dr. Carpenter, on ways that we could incorporate green infrastructure into that project, and still remain committed to making sure that that is a part of that project. We know that it can be the kind of thing that we would show off to private developers in the community, as well as maybe some of our neighbors on incorporating that vital function. All right, moving down then to building improvements. This is I want to call attention to the City Hall office reconfiguration. This is obviously a situation where we are talking specific to this building. There was offsetting revenue for this as a transfer in from the court fund, which is, again, has been dormant since consolidation of the court back in 2015. 350 we think is something we can make some good improvements on. There's whatever doesn't get done in that fiscal year, we do have an allocation of 250 for the year previous. That would come solely from the general fund. We'd be exhausting the court fund and the transfer as proposed this year. So again, we want to start with workflow improvements as well as security improvements. Our building certainly could use quite a bit of both. But there are structural elements that need to be addressed, water leaking problems, and then the energy efficiency on the outer shell of the building could stand for some substantial improvements as well.
Just a question on this one. My recollection, there was about 396,000 left in the court fund, and you had there's 300,000 listed here. You had said 350,000. So I'm fine allocating the entirety of the court, whatever's in the court fund, to the City Hall project. Just want to make sure our numbers are matching up.
Yeah, we moved this down from, my apologies if I misspoke. We moved this from 450 down to 300. So I did not intend to throw an extra 50,000 into the project. We think that year one, about $300,000 worth of investment in the building will get us to a better workflow as well as some security improvements in the building.
Okay, thank you.
And then it was the next year that we have 250,000 listed for hopefully some of the additional projects that need to be done at City Hall. That was, HVAC system being a big one on that. And that really is it. We do have a line item in there for furniture. This is just for incidentals as items come up. This chairs, desks, the like. As you notice, we don't have a history of spending all that, but do like to have it in there just in case something were to come up. All right, and that brings us to the end of the City Hall page, or the City Hall section. Questions?
Any additional questions or comments on anything? Again, we've been able to discuss them as we've been going, but if there's anything that we missed or skipped over. No? Okay. I think that wrapped that portion of City Hall. And we will now move into the City Attorney's Office.
Okay. All right, Mr. Mayor, that is page 19 on the document, 18 on the electronic version. These tend to be pretty standard. We do have, this covers both our labor attorney as well as John Starron's office, the city attorney. The labor attorney, it's a pretty standard allocation year over year. We do have a little bit extra built in. We anticipate some things coming up. Should the labor negotiations spill over into the subsequent fiscal year, we've got a little bit extra there. We don't anticipate that to be the case, but want to be prepared should it occur. And then for the city attorney section, you'll see there's an increase there. That obviously marijuana is an ongoing issue. Litigation has been a heavy component of that process so far. So we don't see that ending magically on June 30th, as try as we might. So we did add some additional resources in there to fund the city attorney's work on our behalf.
I do think it's important to note that for the residents to see that there are real dollars for these, in my opinion, frivolous lawsuits that are filed against the city for folks that are just not happy that, with the results, even though they were done the correct way, that there is a cost to the city to fight these. The litigation and ongoing litigation, especially litigation that doesn't seem to have a real clear end in sight at this point, although I hope that it will. But that's money that has to come out of our budget. Every time somebody's unhappy and sues us, we have to pay for it. And I think it's important to show that the city is continuing to fight on the city's behalf here, but it's not free. And we have to have some help in some cases, and we have to make sure that we are defending ourselves as well as we possibly can. And that's where you see this cost here.
That's correct. I don't have any other items on this one, sir.
Any other questions or comments on the labor, city attorney, I should say, and labor consulting?
I just want to echo your previous statement. I had asked for how much have we spent on the litigation related attorney fees, and it's $180,000 so far. Is how much we could have been spending on something else in the city to help the residents, to help the businesses. So it's significant.
It is. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no additional comments, we have come to the conclusion of night one. We were a few minutes ahead of schedule, and as has been mentioned, I didn't do this at the beginning because I really wanted to make sure we got into everything, but we know that this is the most important function that we as council members serve as being good stewards of the resources from the residents, to support the residents and the businesses. And we are still dealing, obviously, with the unknown impact of COVID, and we've seen that a couple of times today. In fact, there is a section in this budget that just has COVID on one of the pages where we talk about what we've done from that standpoint. And still, this budget there's still a lot of question marks. We're not sure how much we heard there are federal funds that we hope will come, and we hope they'll come in the amount that we've been told. But the reality is, that stuff is out of our hands. And as it goes to the state first, sometimes we don't always get the same numbers that we think we're going to get. So we have to continue to budget with those unknowns in mind, and making sure that not only are we maintaining a healthy fund balance that is within our fund balance policy that we've instituted, but also making sure that we continue to provide the services requisite of the city of Berkeley, the services that we want to provide our residents and we will continue to provide our residents. One thing that only came up a little bit today, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, was continuing to honor our legacies as well, continuing to honor the promises that we've made in the various pensions and OPEBs, and we talked a little bit about it in the slideshow at the beginning. Those are things that are going to continue to be important to us, and we will continue to make sure that we have those conversations to honor the promises that we've made, but making sure that Berkeley continues to be the place that people want to be. And although that is the tagline, it's also true. You get caught in the Berkeley vortex. We all know that. Once you move here, it's tough to leave because you don't want to leave. And we need to make sure as elected officials that we're continuing to provide not only the current level of service, but looking at ways to always improve and to be better, whether it's technology, parks, our public works, our public safety, our library. We'll talk tomorrow, certainly parks and recreation as well. It's incredibly important. And I know that you guys have spent, I don't know how long, but looking through this budget in preparation for this meetings. I want to thank the directors for the months that they have put in. I know, January we talk about New Year and everyone's excited about resolutions. Well, for department heads, that means the budget season's happening. And so it's a little different for them. They've been working on this. Certainly Mark, Lori, Sue, the whole staff, putting together this information, making sure that, if we had any questions, we have all reached out, I'm sure, and then we were able to get answers to our questions. So for the residents, if it looks like, we're saying, yes, we understand things that are on these pages, one, it's because we've looked at them, and two, it's because we have talked about them. Now, we certainly want to call out anything that is certainly an increase or looks a little bit different than prior years. But council has spent time, so council, department heads, the finance department, continue to do a tremendous job putting this document together for us to go through and make sure that if there are questions, the residents are certainly aware of what the answers are to those questions and how we got to the numbers that we've gotten to this evening. And we'll get through hopefully tomorrow and not Thursday as well. I think we'll be able to finish tomorrow. That's certainly pending Derek, but we'll put him on the clock if we have to. Any other closing statements before we adjourn this evening? Or I've taken everybody's time. I apologize for my comments. Councilmember Henning, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, I think I misrepresented how much our litigation costs have been. I misread some of the information that Mr. Baumgartner had provided to us. I think it's closer to around $23,000 so far. It's still significant and it's only going to grow, but I just wanted to correct that error.
Well, on our costs, yes. And again, there are other places where we do get some support there, but yes, at the end of the day is, January to June was 13,000 a month almost, it says in here as a footnote for the projection for the city attorney and what's coming on. So the reality is we don't know how much it's going to cost us at the end of the day. We just know that it is a cost, and the further we get, certainly the higher that is going to go. And that's not, that's not the only litigation that we tend to find ourselves in as well. All right, well, thank you, everybody. We will look forward to reconvening tomorrow at 6 and continuing to move through the rest of the budget. If there are no other comments, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Your Honor.
Support.
Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Baker with support from Mayor Pro Tem Dean. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Turbrack?
Yes. The first budget work session is adjourned.